we'll all join in the salute to our nation's flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we can do the roll call and declaration of conflicts of interest.
Councilmember Abram, here and none. Councilmember Vixel,
Here and none.
Vice Mayor Franco,
Here and none.
Councilmember Moniz,
Here and none.
Mayor Bublak.
Here are none. All right, next will be the approval agenda as posted or amended.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak.
Yes, and it passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item is a presentation with CDBG CV COVID by Mr. Fagan. Welcome to your first presentation.
Oh, I'm excited.
Did I mess up? Or is this different? Oh, this is obvious.
To move it each time. Tonight, we're just going to go over the CDBG CV program. We're going to do a overview of what the program can do briefly, and some suggestions on, or ideas on directions we might go, looking for the council's direction on how to move forward on this program. It was, let's see, okay, this act was moved in March 27th, 2020, which is, as we all know, that's right around the time COVID really got active. The initial grant was a total of $861,502, of which it came in two different pots of money. Currently, we have spent about $94,000. All of that was spent in community housing services, housing shelter services, and that was to assist people that were going to be either losing their housing, assist in down payment, assist in deposits, something if they lost their job or lost their employment, it would assist them to maintain their housing during that time. Currently, it's not really active at all because for the most part, that part of the COVID has passed for the most part, at least we hope for good. Eligible uses. The 5 major categories of eligible uses are public services, public facilities and improvements, economic development, ongoing coronavirus recovery, and administration and planning. In emergency payments, this is a listing of the rent, the mortgage, housing counseling, food banks. These are items that that the funds could be used for initially. Public facilities and improvements. There are many things we could use the money for there. Medical facilities, emergency shelters, non-congregate shelters, day access centers, social services, crisis centers, public right-of-ways, outdoor, improvement in buildings and accessibilities. Improvement of buildings and accessibilities is a very important thing with COVID because at its peak, it could be communicated through touch, and that was not a good thing. Direct assistance, financial grants or loans, repurposing to manufacturers, and public design and changes and adaptations. That's kind of how I would want to say it. It's a little bit more non-defined. It's more open. There's more open to interpretation of what that could actually be. But again, and when we get a little bit farther, we'll talk about what really has to happen. Educational programs for students. One of the things that I know personally that education in 2022, when the COVID had started to turn around, early 2022, education, they were about 6 to 9 months behind the students would be because of all the interruptions, all this other stuff. So this is an area where I think that it could be helpful for the city to address in whichever way it can. I mean, this program cannot really put up the money to fund the actual services, but it can provide locations to do that. Job training, housing counseling, which we talked about a little earlier, broadband infrastructure, which became very, very prevalent during COVID. I mean, city council meetings where nobody would be in this room virtually, and you know, you go see your doctor and it was online and everything else. So improving that for the community is very important. Public facilities, ventilation, HVAC systems with HEPA filters. HEPA filters are the same thing they use on airlines when they purify air. So, and matter of fact, one of the safest ways to travel during COVID was on airlines, because that system was repurified, unless the person sneezed on you, virtually every few minutes. What are our community needs? The three areas we have to look at is prevent, prepare, and respond. Right now, prevent is probably more of our direction that we want to be looking at, I believe. Currently, these are some ideas that we have. They're not conclusive, I mean, they're not all-inclusive or anything like that, but these are ideas of kind of projects that would qualify under this CV program. The senior center, to upgrade the facility for ADA exterior door accessibility. This building has got to be well over 50 years old. I happen to know that because my wedding reception was held there many, many years ago. So I'm very familiar. Access the HVAC with the HEPA filters would help that situation. Improved Wi-Fi, touchless fixtures in the restrooms especially. And roofing to make sure that you have a sealed area. Oops. Marty Yerby Center. This is an area that most of this would have to deal with bathrooms that we could deal with. It would be accessibility. Actually, the bathroom isn't handicap accessible as it sits today. It would have to be moved, I mean, it would have to be adjusted. And entrance and HEPA filters for the things. This is one of those that we would have to partner with someone else like Parks and Rec to provide services, but this would allow them to serve the population that we need to serve in this area. These projects are just examples. There's no definitive to them. Initially, with the funds we have remaining, these projects would not expend all the funds or even close, I don't believe at this point in time. We have until, and I hate to say the last day because I never like to wait to then. We have until 2026 to expend these dollars so that we can approach the expenditures on not a conservative basis, but a prioritized basis. We just don't have to shotgun them out, and which I like doing, because when we can take them one at a time, we prioritize. This is what we want to do first, whatever it ends up costing, because right now when you go out to bid for something, you can't guarantee. I mean, there's nothing there. Again, in these areas, we're talking about in the senior center, increasing the broadband, the services, the accessibility, and the health in the bathrooms. Next step. Right now, based on what we have seen so far, we need council direction on what would be the important direction items. I believe if we come up with a priority list of 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the number would be, then to prioritize them and to address them one at a time so that we don't come up with short with money, and at the same time we get that project done and we move to the next. I think that the reason I look at Marty Yerby as a priority currently is because we need to get out there and assist the children to move forward in their education. As it says, the deadline is September 2026. I don't have my name on here because I'm not here every day, and if anybody had any questions regarding this, that would be the person to contact, and they will and we can move forward. That ends what I'm looking at, but I think the one thing that I have to, and I wrote it in very bold language because I can't read really well as far as size. All activities must assist in prevention, preparation, and to prevent, prepare, and respond to the COVID now and in the future. That's the biggest thing about this money. If we can't relate it to COVID, we can't use it. And they're very, when I read through the documentation, I mean, every time, that's what they're telling me. And this is different from any of our other CDBGs, home programs, and anything else, where this is not a difficulty in that. Is there any questions or directions or?
Is it safe to say that any HVAC, like, I know that the police and fire, facility is having major issues there, is that also, I mean, when all of your employees are potentially around people who may be exposed, and would that be?
I wouldn't say 100% that I'm sure,
Sure.
but I would believe that that could be a qualifying thing. The only thing, it would have to be who's serviced by that public facility, not the people working in it, but who is serviced by it, because that's where we have to get that, we have to be able to serve people in the low mod income, which is 80% of area median. So we'd have to have documentation to be able to show that in any area. I mean, City Hall would be the same situation if we were looking at doing bathroom fixtures that would be touchless in City Hall. Same thing, we would have to be able to document that
Okay.
before we would want to move forward.
Question?
Is there, I mean, obviously, you look forward to an audit at some point in time. And, I mean, is there somebody out there that can give you guidance that when you go to step off that cliff and spend that $600 and some, $1,000, are you, I mean, is there somebody to tell you that, yeah, you're dotting all your i's and crossing your t's, not coming back, 3 years later and say, oh, by the way, you owe us that money back plus penalties? Or is it up to your
No,
judgments?
with this type of program, we have asked them in the past on certain projects, specifically, would this qualify? One of the examples we had in the survey was putting downtown bollards in the city, and we specifically asked about that item, and they had told us that it would not, because we couldn't show the serving the low to mod income people in that area. As a matter of fact, City of San Luis Obispo was going to put those same things in their area, and had quite an expense. It was like $1.3 million to put them in. I don't know how many and everything else, but they came up with an alternative to that was quite a bit, but it's still, that's the negative. It was still funded out of general fund.
Yeah.
Okay. But we would check on these things. It gives us the time, we have the time to go to address it. And so we can say, this is what we're trying to do, and HUD could come back and tell us, we have a rep that we deal with, would come back and tell us, these for sure don't count, or this does.
Question?
We had previously funded some rental assistance, mortgage assistance. Do we know how much of that is remaining?
I don't know for 100% sure. There is a small amount of it remaining, but of this 600,000 we have to spend that's non-administrative, it is, how do you want to say it? Most of it is not allocated to anything specific at this point in time. So anything we would want to do going forward, even if we wanted to put more money in there, we would have to come back to council and amend the 2021, I think it's 2021 annual action plan.
Okay.
So anything we have to do, and the thing is, that makes it better because we can come back, we have a bid, we have a price, we have a contract, we have everything together to council.
Let's see. It says in here that we could use it for internet access.
Wi-Fi
Internet.
broadband.
Yeah. Could we use that to boost some accessibility, like on the west side? I mean, that would be our low to very low income ratios.
That's an idea I hadn't thought of, but that's an idea we can look into to see if it qualifies.
Yeah.
We'd have to look at how we do that.
Possibly in the,
And that's one area that I can absolutely tell you,
Yeah.
I have no expertise in. As far
possibly
as-
also in the Marty Yerby building.
Correct.
That would absolutely work
That would be a
there.
good,
Thank you, by the way, for giving us this list. That's very helpful.
I do have a question. On that topic of like the rental assistance, that whereas the majority of the funds expended so far have gone to, there was some of the issue of being able to expend that had to do with people needed to show direct hardship from COVID, right? So
correct.
we're kind of gonna have to switch gears into these longer term projects now, right?
Yeah, assuming that there's not another outbreak or something, as it sits today, I would think that's correct, absolutely.
So what do you see coming back to us for,
Well, I would, what,
item, what, okay.
what I was looking for is direction from the council. We put a couple items here, we talked about broadband. If council would give us direction as to what it, and I hate to say prioritize it, if prioritize it, and then we could address that and bring those back in an order that would be acceptable to the council.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do calendars after, yeah. All right, I'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak to this presentation? Okay, we'll close public comment. I absolutely think we start with both the HVAC and the Wi-Fi for Marty Yerby and see what's left after that and have us each independently submit some things to our city manager to
Okay.
have it, and then we can come back and prioritize after that. But that, I feel like that's just an obvious.
Okay,
My priority's always been seniors and kids, so I like both of those ideas with the senior center and Marty Yerby, especially with Marty Yerby being part of Columbia Park.
Mhm.
I just think that while we're doing a lot of other things there, it would be great timing to bring that up to a really high level so kids could utilize it.
yeah, the only other thing with Marty Yerby, we would have to address the bathrooms too.
Absolutely.
That was my question. I'm bringing those up to ADA standards and.
Yeah, and we actually, we walked it and we have a, we have an idea what we have to do. We would bring someone in to make sure that everything was in compliance, but,
Yeah, it's pretty old, yeah.
I echo the sentiments on Marty Yerby. I think that only makes sense with all the activity that's going on in that area. And just to kind of touch on the idea that came from the community on the downtown bollards, I understand that couldn't meet the area income requirements, but as I shared with Senior City Manager Wilson and to some staff members, that I would be interested in seeing if the portable vehicle barriers that are used in like San Luis Obispo City and Pismo Beach and things like that, if seeing that those are portable and they serve an economic development, function, and they allow for us to have city events maybe near Columbia Park outside where there's not a less chance of transmission of airborne disease, I would like to see if we could explore that.
yeah, I did kind of look into that, and San Luis Obispo has, it's a model for that use of that equipment. I mean, they actually bought 2021, they actually bought 16 of those, and it was doing so well. 1 year later, they bought 36 more, and so, and they're using it. But again, when I looked at both of the funding sources, they use general fund. That, and so what I looked at that, I've got notes on that that I put together, that if we can find a funding source, and I'm not asking for general fund, so that's not,
Smart.
but at the same time, I think that, I looked at, in Oregon, they were applying for a grant, the public services and somebody else, I don't know if it was rec or parks, they had a small match, like a 10% match, and they were applying for $300,000. And I don't know that any of that's still available, but those are areas, once we got a good idea, all we gotta do is find where we can plant it. And I find that idea to be, when I read more about it, I found it to be very, very, it could be very useful in the community for a lot of different things, even law enforcement too, because they were saying that they were doing the Super Bowl and they were using exclusively that piece of equipment for road blocking for the Super Bowl when it was in Southern California.
Director Schultz, can I ask you a question about the senior center? I thought that when I was in there last, they said that the Wi-Fi they had put it in, yes? So that's one less thing that we would need with the senior center, but there's ADA issues with the bathroom, the toilets are too high. And I think there's some AC issues or something like that
Yes.
also?
There's AC issues, and we would want to, for ADA and for COVID purposes, touchless fixtures in the
Okay.
bathrooms. And
Right.
they are expensive, but they do provide a very good assistance in non-transmittal of any kind of flu or COVID virus.
I personally don't think it's gonna be at all hard to spend 600 and how many $1,000 you're talking about between those two buildings. I mean, you could probably spend it all in Marty Yerby with a few bucks left for toilet paper dispensers. I guess.
Touchless?
Touchless toilet. I have not seen that, but okay. I mean, I'm in favor of let's come back with some numbers and make some decisions.
On,
We have a consensus that get Marty Yerby started, at least get bids and stuff?
okay,
We have a five nod.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, 5 nods.
It's a formal nod.
So I would say that would be first.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
That sounds-
Thank you, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is potential city council policy for city council committees. What happened recently is we had an ad hoc meeting, and I forgot that we had newer council and that we hadn't shared how this works. So I had even asked the city manager, hey, nobody else is going to this, right? Because I would go if we could. And he said, nobody's going. And then there was somebody attending, and so I thought, well, maybe there's no point in ad hocs at all if in fact some people go and some don't, we don't know, and we need to either say, yes, we have an ad hoc and only those 2 people go and they get information and bring it back for everybody, or we just have meetings and we do it differently. I don't care which, I just think that it makes it really hard because I would have been there if I thought we could be there. So it's kind of awkward because it looks like I don't care, and I do. So, kind of curious, this is the only time we have to talk about it, where all of us can stand in front of God and everybody and have this discussion. So I asked that we put it on here just to get a consensus of what we want out of this.
I'll bite because I was the person who showed up to the ad hoc committee meeting recently, and yes, I am a newer council member here, but I did do my due diligence to speak with the city attorney on multiple occasions before that to make sure that my presence there was in full compliance with the Brown Act. The Brown Act specifically states the circumstance that happened on August 31st, that council members who are not appointed to a committee can come to a public meeting. And Mr. City Attorney, I'd reference the Brown Act Government Code 54952.2 subsections, or Section C, subsection 6, that clearly states that's not a Brown Act violation. But I went there because I wanted to hear directly from the public. I think there's immense value in that. And, despite being an elected official, all of us, we still retain our rights as members of the public to attend public, open, notice meetings. Our rights are limited. We have to be quiet, and we cannot speak at these meetings. I sat right there in the back and followed the spirit and letter of the law. So I have no opinion on whether we should allow it or not, because I think the law is pretty clear on that we can come. If ad hoc committees serve a purpose to dive deeper into the subject matter jurisdiction that's being discussed there. So there is value in having those meetings, there's value in hearing from the public, and there's value in us who are not appointed to that committee getting to participate fully under the law as observers in the public.
I would just say that at no point did anybody say there was a Brown Act violation. It was just, there is a perception, and perception is reality. When we're anywhere together, if we were sitting at a restaurant together, people would think we were talking about business and that we were doing something. So even our presence can make people think that we are in agreement with something. So for 15 years, I've been pretty solid on, like, should I just stay and let that ad hoc? I didn't come to your ad hoc. I don't think it's a violation of the Brown Act. I think that it's just a perception that really, that leaves us wondering what we should do or not do. So that's why I asked you to all have your input today. We can decide, forget ad hocs, and let's just do, let's get down and dirty and do it at the meetings. I have no preference. I just want to make sure the public understands. I personally would have been there. I just have been always told that it looks bad, just don't go. So there I was. Anybody else have a point?
Yeah, I agree. I would have gone had I thought the option was there. I don't attend everybody else's ad hoc committees because it does give a perception that we're talking. And it also gives a perception that I'm getting information to make a decision before the decision's been brought to the entirety of the council. And I never want to be a party to a decision being made beforehand. I know I can go. I've gone to other meetings where we've had homeless staff meetings, but as far as an ad hoc goes, I didn't go to the cannabis one. I didn't go to this one. I just think it's better that the members of the council that are actually on the ad hoc bring back the information to the rest of us, frees up our time, and it gives us an idea from their perspective of different things that we probably didn't see or wouldn't have seen. So I like the idea of workshops versus ad hocs because the public can come and talk, we can all come and talk all at the same time, we get the information at the same time, there's no perception that we're doing anything wrong. We don't advertise our meetings as much as we should, and that's a big problem that we need to rectify. But I prefer workshops over ad hocs.
Anybody else?
I say if it's not broken, don't fix it.
So, what's that mean?
I mean, the point being, again, we all, just because we're up here, we do have rights.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Ms. Abrams sat in the back corner, didn't say a word. She gathered the information that she, you know, and I don't know that I necessarily wanna have somebody else give me their perspective when I can get my own, if I choose.
Okay.
So I think I like that option.
The pros of an ad hoc is that everyone can have more opportunity to talk. Typically, they aren't put into this is, you know, codified and we meet at this time, you can just put it out because you have a different situation where you have planning commission and you. But when it's two, it's not typically like that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just telling you pros and cons. So I wait and hesitate on the shaking of the head for just a second. So it's where do we let the public have the most say? If there's different times that we're hosting these ad hocs, there's opportunity for people to come and meetings are difficult at night, you know. The Board of Supervisors does one meeting in the morning and one at night. I mean, nobody has a problem with that, so I mean, maybe we do that, but we just have to have an understanding in front of God and everybody what we wanna do and what it looks like. I truly believe that it doesn't matter, we just gotta figure out if it fits for all of us. It does leave a perception when we all show up somewhere that we're in support of something, and that you can't erase people's perception because they have whatever they want.
So, I don't care which way we do it. My preference is workshops over ad hocs. I actually asked the city attorney when Councilmember Abram walked in because it panicked me because, one of the biggest things that an elected official fears is a Brown Act violation, right? And I was like, Mr. City Attorney, there's a third council member here, what's going on? But the problem is, and after that happened, I went and I read the government code section, and it's clear, right? We can show up and there can be 3 of us, but you can't participate. So what happens if you're sitting in the back corner and somebody walks up and asks you a question, and some other citizen says, oh, she's answering questions, she's involved, and she's participating, and now we just opened up a can of worms because perception is reality. And then now you have 2 other council members, whoever it is, on that ad hoc, and now they're dragged into a Brown Act violation. And that's what I don't want to see. So I don't care if it's workshops or ad hocs, as long as we're consistent across the board, either way.
Okay, let's open it to the public.
Yes, Milt Treeweiler. In the past, we've had community meetings at different schools, usually one in each district, and they worked fine. We need to get out into the public. And the point with a meeting personally right here with just one, you know, the regular type meeting, you're going to be limiting the number of people who can come here. If you go to the districts, each district, and we used schools, and we had our city attorney go with us, and I can't remember the city manager was there or not, but We had a lot of those, and we covered a lot of information. We had good meetings. There's just no openness anymore in government. Everything is kind of secretive. You got to keep it behind closed doors. That's what's wrong. That's what's going on with this country that's not good. We need to keep everything open and let everybody be involved. So I would like to see district meetings on issues like this and work it out that way. Thank you.
Thanks.
I would say we should keep the ad hoc meetings because in workshops, the public really doesn't have a chance to converse. They get to come up here and make a statement, and then they're allowed to respond to anything else in a workshop. In an ad hoc, they can say what they want. We can ask questions, they can answer them, we can counter that. So I absolutely think you need to keep the ad hoc. And the second thing is, if everyone wants to show up to an ad hoc meeting, that's fine. Just follow the Brown Act. Stay in the back, keep your mouth shut. If someone had asked Miss Abrams a question, she could have just said, "I'm here as a citizen, not as part of the city council," and that takes care of everything for there. Don't change anything. Thank you.
Good evening. So maybe you can help me understand, clarify, what's the difference between an ad hoc committee meeting and a workshop meeting in terms of how the public can interact with the members of the ad hoc committee or whoever's running the workshop? Okay, because Bob just talked about how you would have more chance for interaction in the ad hoc committee, and that really was not the case on the 31st, okay? So I was thinking that I was going to come up here and say I would want to have workshops. So I'm a little confused about what the rules are. If you could clarify that, I'd appreciate it.
Anybody want to field that? I could take a guess at it, but I don't want to be held to, you said the wrong thing, so let you do it, Ms. Pickles.
How do I want to answer that? So we have regular city council meetings, which is tonight. Which requires 72 hours notice of the agenda. And it must be based on a regular calendar. Special meetings can be called with less notice, and they're not on a regular schedule. A workshop, at least in my experience, and I think it's the way it's done in Turlock, is generally some type of, it could be a regular or a special meeting. I think I've usually seen them as special meetings of the entire city council dealing with an issue. So I think the issue there is about not having interaction is you have all 5 elected officials, in the case of Turlock, at a workshop. Then you have at least two kinds, so there can be more. There are standing committees and ad hoc committees, which maybe should be called subcommittees, because the implication there is it isn't it is not a majority of the council. It's normally up to 2 members in the case of Turlock. A standing committee is a committee normally and that's the code section that was cited is about standing committees. It is normally done on a regular schedule where, you can tell by the name, right? A standing committee means that it goes on indefinitely and it normally has jurisdiction over a particular matter, substantive matter. I remember Modesto, for example, had, I'm not going to get them all right, but they had at least 3 standing committees that I recall, an economic development committee, a public safety committee, and there must have been something that was about the money committee, whatever Isaac would call his committee. I think it was the finance committee maybe. And so those were ongoing standing committees of 2 council members. An ad hoc committee normally is something of a more temporary nature, where they have a particular task. In the case of the ones we have, the homeless and the cannabis. And so those normally are limited to two, or not a majority of the council, because then you would be, you'd be like a regular meeting or something, you'd be something else. So that's kind of the lay of the land about how all those work out.
The difference between the marijuana one and the homeless one?
The addition of the 2 planning commissioners, the ad hoc committee, which doesn't, a pure ad hoc committee, here we're running into a difficulty because they both have ad hoc in the name. A council ad hoc committee composed of only 2 council members actually is kind of an exception to the Brown Act requirements. And because it's of a temporary nature, it's really meant to give the council subcommittee, I'll call it, flexibility to go out there and, dig into an issue and get information without all the formalities. The cannabis committee does include 2 planning commissioners, and I'll credit Councilmember Abram for raising this. I had a theory why that still wasn't a committee that had to follow the Brown Act, but I think that the better part of valor was that it should, because it had the additional members on there. And I've even seen more research since then that I think that's the correct answer. I think it was I thought it was less certain at the time, but I saw something recently that I think that's the right answer. So when you put other people on your committee, you turn it into a more formalized Brown Act committee. Now, it's not a standing committee in the sense of it's not based on a regular schedule and things like that, which normally a standing committee would have a regular calendar like the city council itself does. So the choice, sorry, let me stop there because I hope that's somewhat clear.
Anyone else before we close it public?
Hi, I'm Mary Jackson. I'm troubled by this because although I am not an attorney like Mr. Petrolakis, I think I could play one on TV. I do know pretty well how the Brown Act works and why it was created in the first place. There's a Turlock-Stanislaus County connection. You should Google it. I don't have time to talk about it. I think Mr. Bixel hit the nail on the head. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. Ms. Abram was following the law. And in my experience, after watching the workshop that we had about the marijuana dispensaries, where we had this long discussion between our city attorney and Mr. Isaac, I think it is, our finance person, about where the monies were coming from. We had it was 5:50 when we started because I had another meeting to get to at 6. And I remember I ran up here and I spoke, and then I ran out to make it to my 6 o'clock meeting. But it was only for a very specific time, and to me it was extremely frustrating that this whole room was packed and we had 9 minutes to talk and you hear the public. So for me, again, Ms. Black, it appears that we're trying to exclude public participation. Ad hoc, you're trying to limit the fellow council members from attending meetings. You want to hear firsthand what people are saying. I actually ran into that meeting because I had something else to do again at 6 o'clock. And I think I sat next to Miss Abram. And I didn't ask her any questions. I was actually talking to Maris Sturdivant, who was on my left. So you want to hear people's opinions. You want to hear discussions. I echo the other points about having the neighborhood or the different district meetings. That is important. Do that. But when you have an ad hoc committee meeting, at least with the marijuana one, I wasn't here and haven't had the time to look at the homeless one. You can have questions can be asked. My questions that I ask here are never answered, but we'll talk about that in public comment. So in the last year, more than a dozen downtown business and property owners have spoken to the council, and you're just not sort of ignoring them. And so what's difficult to understand, like why were we not supporting the RAD card? People come here and speak and they just get ignored and it gets frustrated. And again, several people have asked for this council to open up Zoom meetings so people can be at home. I mean, I've done a Zoom meeting while selling Girl Scout cookies. I did that sitting on a pallet of water. And I was listening to an IRC, the International Rescue Committee. So my point is, there was no rules broken, no Brown Act violation, and if people have that perception, that's on them, in my opinion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment, and let me bring it back. This is not to put a letter, scarlet letter on Councilmember Abram. This dialogue was to say, what do you guys think? Because you do read all of the social media, and that's, we're not getting enough ability to talk at an ad hoc. Nobody attended this one. There was people here. So it's the only way we can have this dialogue is to do it like this, not to have any one person be taken out and tarred and feathered. It is to have this dialogue, what sounds best. What I've heard so far is about a 50-50. It doesn't sound like there's anything that everybody's like, absolutely, let's do that. So I don't know. What do you guys want to do?
I'd like to chime in specifically to what, like Mr. Bridegroom was saying. I can only speak to the ad hoc committee that I am the chair of and how I chose to make sure that that committee meeting was run. And if we continue to have committee meetings, we're meeting again in October. I'd welcome anyone else to join us. But as opposed to what I've experienced in my limited time here to see workshops, is we had 7 or 8 policy points that we had our consultant go to. We've opened public comment. We had back and forth and dialogue. So that gave us ample time to really make sure that everyone who wanted to show up could be heard. And if that's the only way that we can do that, I will follow what the majority wants to do, but I would like to retain as much communication with the public as possible, and I believe that we achieved that at our first meeting of the ad hoc committee on cannabis, and I'd like to have an opportunity to continue that work there.
I've been on both. I've been in workshops. I've been on ad hocs. I've been the chair of ad hocs. And again, it doesn't matter to me. I just don't want to have the perception that someone didn't care because they weren't there. I absolutely would have been there. I've been on ad hocs for the homeless since Mayor Soyseth had ad hocs about 8 years ago, before I was even on council. So I still think workshops give all of the council equal say at the same time. We all get the same information at the same time. No one gets it ahead of time, but I'm willing to do it either way. I also really do like Mr. Treeweiler's suggestion that we have district meetings. I like that idea a lot.
So we used to have a lot of district meetings before COVID, and then post-COVID, not everything is going back to the way it was before. But town halls and district meetings are definitely a more productive environment to get community outreach and to have real back and forth dialogue with the community, which is what we want. And it's hard to do in an ad hoc or even in a workshop. It's easier out there in the field. That being said, I like workshops because we're all 5 here. Everybody can be a part of it. The public comment's gonna work pretty much the same. Maybe we just go to workshops. But whatever the majority wants to do, I'll roll with it.
So let's go back to your dialogue real quick on districts. Would your expectation be that we all go to the district, or that the district representative who is representing that district go with staff and bring back something?
Yeah, that was my, I believe that was the point that Mr. Trueller made. And I like that idea that, you go in your district, you hear from your district people, and then you bring it back to council. And maybe that's where the workshop or the item comes in. But I like the idea of the district council member having a meeting with their district members and having staff there to help.
I would ask my colleagues then, if that's the direction we want to go, what is the expectation of the frequency of those meetings? And I would also ask if, seeing as the mayor is representing the whole city, if you would be willing to join each of us in our districts.
Absolutely. That way it'd be only just 2 of us, and then we could make sure that nobody messes up and we're all doing the same thing and we can bring back the advocacy of each of the districts. How often, I guess that would be up to your staff to figure out how often you could, go out. But I think workshop sounds like, the way to go from this point on so that we do that and district, representations.
May I ask then, with this discussion that's, percolating tonight, are we disbanding our ad hoc committees?
Wow. How many?
I'm not
I'm not
either.
advocating for that or one
Right,
way or the
right, no,
other,
no, I get you.
but if we're having district meetings, if
I'm
we're
not
having
on-
workshops, like where does that go? Because
Yeah.
I have real planning that's happening underway for our
Absolutely.
coming October meeting that I need to know how to proceed.
I absolutely think that you keep them the same people that are on the ad hocs, keep them the same. But from now on out in the future, let's, maybe do workshops and district meetings to get more public feedback. I think that we don't advertise our meetings enough, so we don't get enough people coming in. And maybe our workshops need to be, on a different date and for a longer period of time, so all the public can get in. If they work at, until 5 and they work in Modesto, they can't get here till 6. Maybe we need to have from 6 to 8 or 6 till the crowd's gone.
My suggestion would be, depending on the number of subject matters that you're taking up at any given time, we can arrange for that subject matter to be taken up in each of your districts. So it'll be a long process, but we can certainly accommodate that, and we can certainly organize that.
Okay, but back to the ad hoc,
I think we're talking about two separate things.
we are,
We are.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I mean, so what I'm hearing, we're gonna keep our ad hocs, but Ms. Abrams better not show up?
She should show up to hers.
Well, of course, but I mean, again, it gets back to our original, she had a right to be there. She's not
Nobody
breaking
said
any
she
law.
didn't. Nobody said she didn't.
Well,
It's
that's why this is being
No,
talked about.
But being talked because we weren't there and I had a conversation with Mr. Wilson. Is anybody else gonna be there but the ad hoc? He said no. I presumed he talked to you guys. I didn't know. Or I'd have been there. So, not her fault, but this is how we communicate publicly.
Well, also, us not being informed doesn't necessarily make it wrong or right.
Correct. But that's why we're talking about it now, so everybody's on the same page and we all know what it looks like and what we're all gonna do so that we don't step on each other.
And I would just like to say, my attendance there was not to step on anybody. I did not communicate to Mr. Wilson, so he gave you accurate information because I was there as a member of the public. The only communications I had was with the city attorney to ensure that I was acting in accordance with everything that I needed to do as an elected official while still being able to act as a public citizen.
Okay, I'm still trying not to have victims here. We're all here, 5 people elected, trying to make a discussion in front of you guys. So we're making sausage here, but nobody is being singled out. It is a dialogue to decide what it looks like from this point on. So, where are we at?
I apologize. I still don't understand how we're having the ad hocs and then what the difference is between an ad hoc and the workshops. I understand the district meetings, but how do they all interplay? Mr. Wilson?
Well, you could hold the workshops in the districts. Okay?
But you can, not as a group.
No, you've got your district council member and the mayor, if she chooses to come to that district council meeting. You could have a workshop on a subject matter. You get both dialogue from the public as well as participation by the council, members that are in that committee. And then you bring it back to the full city council to share with them what you learned.
Okay, I still think we're talking apples and oranges here. I mean, this is about potential city council policies for committees. Committees are ad hoc. I mean, that's basically what we have, right? Town halls are district meetings are different. Workshops are different.
Essentially, it's about communication is what it's coming to.
Well, it's
right?
about communication. Well, yes and no. I
We
mean,
can't talk to each other anywhere else. I mean, it
I
makes
understand
right?
that, but I mean, just because you can't speak to each other at an ad hoc committee meeting doesn't mean you can't be there.
Correct.
And I mean, if all we're worried about is perception, I think that you're way off, personally. I mean, well, I'm just saying,
I got 15 years that says I'm
Well,
way on.
maybe you are.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But again, I brought it here so that we could all be on the same page and have an agreement, what are we gonna do? So that if everybody goes, then why don't we just have the workshop and forego ad hocs if that's gonna be the case, so that everybody knows and everybody can talk and we can engage and we can have this dialogue like we're having right now.
and that's fine too. I mean, I just think we're debating something that doesn't need to be debated.
I appreciate the opportunity that this is here. We all get to talk at the same time. That is good, healthy, productive work. I like, just to keep the example very narrowly focused. I'm the chair of the ad hoc committee of cannabis. We are preparing for a meeting at the end of October. Will that meeting happen? Or if it's going to be shifted to some sort of district workshop, something or other, how is that going to be formulated? That is my question, and hopefully that can be a case study of what we're kind of talking about here.
I will say this, I don't think it's appropriate to derail anything going on with either the ad hocs right now. So and we're not voting on anything right now.
No, we're just
So
talking.
I don't think that would be wise, council member.
Okay, so,
I have a question. I mean, since we're worried about perception, have we had any feedback from that meeting?
have you?
I have not.
Right. I've seen the comments on social media about she doesn't care, why wasn't she there? And it would have been, right? So, yes, that
Okay,
is.
my question is, was there feedback from her being there? Ms. Abrams?
No, it wasn't about her. That's what I'm saying. I've never been about Miss Abram. It's about whether or not we are gonna go or not go. All of us.
I still think you have the choice legally.
Well, it's not about, okay. I get it. We're not saying Brown Act's been violated, that somebody did something wrong. We're saying, what do you guys wanna do? So let's continue with your ad hoc. You continue with your ad hoc, and everybody just go to all of it and feel free to communicate all you need to. That's not my quote, but I mean, because I'm not trying to defend somebody. I'm just trying to say, let's have communication, people. Let's just know what we're doing, so none of us step on each other, and everybody gets their position taken care of, and do what they need to do. So, I don't think we're making a vote here anyway. It was just dialogue, so at this point, it doesn't sound like anything changed, so off we go to Mr. Moreno. Let's see if we can make this happen. Non-vote on this either. Oh, thank you. Best problem ever.
No, we're good. So thank you. Today's is a brief update on our sales tax. What we're looking at is a report that you can find on the city's website. It is a quarterly report update from our consultants, Avery, which goes over the 2023 first quarter sales tax. Okay, within this information, one, I'd like to get the information from this is because one, again, this is on the city's website. This is general information that we can give that the public can see financially how we're doing as a city, and it also gives a comparison of the county and as a state as well too. So just to kind of overview in the general part in the top left-hand corner, you can see California sales tax receipts decreased by 0.2%, where you're seeing decreases in the northern and a slight increase in southern. But what you can see from this statement is a large increase within the city of Turlock at 13.8 overall. So what does that mean? So what it's looking at is the last quarter of 22, or the first quarter in 22 compared to the quarter in 23, right? So that's a substantial increase overall, and we'll go into a little bit of report to say why that's a large factor overall. So there is general information that goes through gap analysis. What this is really looking at is within the market, what is actually transpiring within the county. Gap analysis is really saying, okay, within the Stanislaus County, for example, retail sales, are we really hitting that benchmark? Are we fulfilling that overall projection of what needs to be covered? So that information is provided on the report. The meat of the report, which I like to go to, is actually on the second page. So the second page on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the analysis of the sales tax revenue and the cash basis. So this is hitting the primary categories. We can see the analysis from the prior year, going through the change factor, right? So you can see a large increase of 61.1% in your general retail sales. So this is a substantial growth factor in any category. Majority of the categories you are seeing increases, some decreases, primarily in construction, which given the market increase in rates and things of that nature, is pretty projective of the overall state. But you'll go to the overall bottom line, you can see how that 13.8% is actually factored. Now, going into the right-hand side of the page, you can actually get a little more breakdown and see what the county itself is doing, which is actually very substantial, because if you look at the overall county, the city of Turlock is primarily the only one that's actually showing growth. Well, from a quarter-to-quarter basis. There is one other city, the city of Patterson, that at 5.2%, but you are seeing decreases in the remaining parts of the county, and the countywide as well. So the information is public again, just like giving an overview of what we're seeing. Obviously, this builds into our budget, so we do expect increases of what we previously budget. We did have a slight increase of 1.4 that was projected for next year, but obviously this now plays into a factor. So quarterly, we get updates on what that overall looks like, so you will see our budget actually increased because of this factor. You're not going to see a 13.8 because remember, this is just the quarter. It factors through an overall year, but you will see at least a 1.5% increase in the overall. Is there any questions?
Questions? Questions?
Okay, that 1.4 million is year-to-date, or the 1.4 million above our projected?
That's a
budget?
quarterly, well, for this report, it's a quarterly basis. Mhm.
Okay. And comparing 2021, quarter 1 22 to quarter 1 23, reportable sales activity was up 9.6%, I believe it was?
That's correct. So if you look at the presentation, there's different parts of it, right? There's a countywide pool, but this is the important factor when you look on the presentation itself is your quarterly sales that's been reported. So that's where you see the 9.6% overall.
And then sales tax revenue
That's
is
correct.
up 13.8%.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a list of the top 10 revenue generating?
We do. It's actually on the report that you're looking at right now. It gives
It's
you-
in alphabetical order. I'm
So,
just wondering if we have.
for regulation standpoint, we can't rank them as far as highest quality. You really have to present it in this factor. You can't, you can make a guesstimate,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
kinda
so, but for legality reasons, you really can't put them in a ranking format. You have to put them alphabetical and you have to lump them together.
And then Turlock's trend is going up, where with everybody, with the exception of Patterson, is actually trending down.
That's correct. So we are seeing some large economic growth. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of new businesses coming up. I mean, you guys all go to the ribbon cuttings and things of that nature. Amazon is also a large factor within there. So you're going to continue to see quarter-over-quarter growth from the prior year because of that economic development factor.
Well done, Turlock.
Well done, Anthony Sims.
Correct.
All right, I'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to make a comment? No, I'm sorry, missed that. I apologize. Okay, we'll close the public comment, and thank you for that presentation. And
Thank you.
Anthony, excellent job. Nothing but cakes tomorrow at 10. All right, we have public participation. I have a few cards. Milt, you had pull item 5G as in George. Michael. Michael?
Oh,
Sorry.
Michael Joel Gonzalez, the first, 9/12/2023, Turlock City Council meeting. American resolve in just 5 minutes or less. 11, safety first. Last week's number 10 blessing for American resolve, number 10, is the World Merit Badge. So let's make world news. Did you know that there is a safety merit badge to go along with the Stanislaus County Safety Center? Where? Booked. On A&E is currently being filmed from. Did you know that the Arts and Entertainment Network, A&E, is also owned by the History Channel along with Disney? That there is an art merit badge behind it. Did you know that we have our very own Carnegie Arts Center? So many people have been overlooked. You have my love, support, and utter respect. I can't wait to meet you someday. Thank you to all for your service. From one pride to another, I'm just so proud of you. My condolences are extended out to you and your family on behalf of all Turlockians here and abroad. Losing good people isn't an easy thing to forget, so let's never forget. To give you an even more honorability, the President of the United States all 50 of them, also speaks to Lockian. Let's talk voting for just 1 second. Now because of the TV show booked on A&E, which we currently star in, new and upcoming season updates. I am your Michael. I hope you understand that no matter what 49 states you go to or come from, you all have something good to talk about. Being born and raised in Emmanuel, God with us, even God sips. Did you know that you can vote for TV shows and newspapers like the Turlock Journal? I already feel best supporting role right along our emergency responders and workers to capitalize on award seasons. Adults and minors do have a voice. Not everyone is able to vote for the upcoming presidency, but you may be able to vote for your favorite show and extension, ourselves. Thank you to my hometown for understanding I'm here to help. Due to the unique situation of my character's story, also reflects the unique story of our character. With so many places to turn to, I don't know exactly on whom to turn. I love accountability and pull everyone's rank. I also wish everyone on the show booked a very safe homecoming. I'm currently keeping myself abreast with the season, and I can't find one thing that I can't relate to. Thank God for Turlock's Troop 21. It reminds us all about America and how large our troop really is. If you see me on the streets, please keep me honest. Any donations would help for a budget. If a budget is in order, maybe. I just don't want to lose any capitalization for our country or businessmen. That's why I chose workforce to write this memoir. Surely help will arrive soon. My mama taught me that everything is meant for him, so let the dedications begin. When I Saw You by Mariah Carey to all of our emergency responders, Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes, I Will Follow Him by Peggy March, also the Inspector Gadget theme song, Wake Me Up When September Ends by Green Day. Ladies, welcome back. And the good news, we're all in someone's Christmas stocking this year.
All right, I have no other cards for public speaking. Christian, did you want to? Oh,
His hand was up first.
nope. Okay, you won.
Christian Santos here. Good evening, Mayor and City Council, representing the office of Congressman John Duarte. 9/11 is a time to reflect on service and sacrifice, particularly the sacrifice of our first responders, hundreds of whom were killed while attempting to save others on that fateful day. Congressman Duarte was honored to be a part of the ceremony dedicating a portion of Highway 33 as a Corporal Renil Singh Memorial Highway after the tunnels to Towers 5K in Newman, and present a flag flown over the U.S. Capitol to the Singh family. Our office continues to pray for every first responder family in America that has also had to experience the tragedy of receiving a folded flag. One of the most important duties and highest honors a congressman has is nominating the best and brightest young men and women in his district to serve our country at our nation's service academies. Congressman Duarte recently hosted a Service Academy Information Night with representatives from West Point, Annapolis, the Coast Guard Academy, and the Air Force Academy at Atwater High School. 18 prospective nominees and their families attended, and we even had a family from Turlock High NJROTC attend. We're reminding all of our prospective Academy nominees to please submit their application packets by the deadline of October 31st. They can visit duarte.house.gov for more information or call our district office phone number with any questions for more information. We also had the pleasure of hosting a town hall, our first Merced County Town Hall in Atwater. We had 150 people in attendance. It was a standing room only overflow crowd. And for many of those who didn't have a chance to get their questions answered, or for many here that were looking for another opportunity, we're going to be hosting our first San Joaquin County Town Hall on September 25th at 6:30 p.m. at the Lathrop Community Center. That's going to be at 15557 5th Street, Lathrop, California, 95330. We had a very spirited but civil discussion at the Atwater Town Hall, and we look forward to continuing this expression of democracy and discussing issues from water rights to immigration and other issues as we approach the appropriations discussions and other discussions in Washington, D.C. So thank you for your time for this report, and I'll also be at the 10 a.m. Nothing But Cakes ribbon cutting, and I hope the community turns out.
Thank you.
Council staff and Turlock citizens, Milt Treeweiler. In August, I took an Amtrak train across the country to visit relatives. This train ride was really an eye-opener. In a train, even though you travel up to 79 miles per hour, you get to see everything up close. On this 2-day trip, I decided to focus on farmland across the country. This train ride from the Amtrak station in Denair to Sacramento was all farmland except for where there were houses and buildings. As I left the Sacramento Valley into the Sierras, you have the foothills and then forests with some dead and dying trees. Entering Nevada, you see the mountains and desert areas into Reno. The state of Nevada has no food production except for cattle and forage. The state of Nevada looks like a beautiful place to live and a perfect place for buildings and development. The train crosses into Utah, which is a state with hardly any farmland for food production, except cattle raising, corn, and wheat. Entering Colorado, you have more agriculture, with cattle, sheep, hay, potatoes, wheat, and even peaches. Nebraska comes next with soybeans, corn, beef, and pork. And finally, Iowa, which has lots of soybeans, corn, pork, and other grain products. However, these foods do not provide us with a balanced diet. In August, the San Joaquin Valley is the most fertile, productive, and versatile agricultural area on Earth. We have the soils, the weather, the water, the climate, which makes this area desirable for agricultural production. No other area in the nation or the world can duplicate these exceptional conditions and grow over 240 crops. Stanislaus County has the prime farmland, the climate, and the water to grow food for the next 200 years or more, providing our country with healthy food to eat. It is our obligation as council and city of Turlock to preserve this farmland. Yes, it is our obligation to preserve this farmland. There's no other farmland like this anywhere in the world. You look it up on maps, you go on Amtrak, you drive cross country, you're going to see this firsthand. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Rochelle Salas, and I've been a Turlock resident for 38 years. On the morning of June 22nd, 2023, at approximately 6:15 a.m., I was taking my usual route to work. I come down Berkeley, and I take Taylor Road all the way down to the 99 South on-ramp. That morning, I noticed cones on the eastbound side. I was heading westbound. Didn't think anything of it. If you're familiar with Taylor Road, there's always road work, construction. It's a mess. Nothing uncommon. When I got to work, I mentioned to a coworker, we kind of joked about how on our way home we'd probably knock half of those cones out of the way because they were just really that far over. Around 11 o'clock a.m., I was headed into a meeting while I was at work. Another coworker mentioned that they noticed something on my vehicle. I wasn't quite aware of what she was talking about. I went through the meeting, and after the meeting, went to check my car after she had mentioned that she saw something yellow. I realized that after my coworker and I had recollected our previous conversation about the cones, that it could have been street paint. And come to find out, after confirming with the city, it was in fact during the month of June that the city does paint stripe. And I was advised to file a claim at that time because I did have paint all over my car. I did hand deliver this claim on July 11th to your office here. It was a total loss in damages that equaled $1,335.87 to my personal property. Your third-party administrator denied the claim on August 9, 2023, based on, and I quote, "The city used a water-based paint that dries in 10 to 15 minutes with both cones and signage out, including wet paint, wet traffic paint, do not pass, caution wet paint, and do not pass." However, there were no signs out that morning on Taylor Road at all. Cones, yes, absolutely cones. Myself and 4 of the drivers that drove that exact same route during the same period of time also can attest to that. The city then provided me with a notice of rejection of the claim on August 14, 2023, which I do not accept based on the fact that the city did not uphold their own requirement of placing both cones and signage. As a tax-paying citizen of Turlock, I am appalled that the city refuses to take responsibility and will not be held accountable for the damages that were caused by, as a direct result of the negligence that I feel they didn't put signs out. If your requirement is to put both signs, you didn't uphold that. So my understanding is in order for me to formally appeal, I need to file a small claims, which I am prepared to do. But first, I'd like to ask that you review this matter in closed session and reconsider covering the damages that were directly caused to my property by the city's street crew. At this time, I'd like to hand over a couple documents to the city clerk and hope that you'll take the time to review it and reconsider considering the circumstances. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Seems to me about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, the city of Turlock entered into an agreement to have someone come down and synchronize the lights on Golden State Boulevard. I'd like to know what the status is of that and when perhaps the light at Olive and Golden State might get fixed rather than being just a flashing red, or is that part of the synchronization? Thank you.
Mr. Goodman, was it you that sent me the email about Golden State and Olive? Somebody in your staff or something that you guys are fixing it this week or something, is that correct?
Well, the contractor is St. Francis, they're replacing all the.
Can you come up real quick so everybody can hear? I'm sorry, because there's probably somebody watching on TV as well. I know somebody said something about they're working on it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, our contractor, St. Francis, is replacing the wiring, the loops in the ground, the wiring to the fixtures at that location. And so they're in the middle of that repair, and while it's under repair, it has to go to flashing red.
Estimated,
I haven't got an estimate on when I responded to you, I had been told that it would be done
this week,
soon.
right?
I don't know what soon is.
Okay,
It's kind of
fair
a
enough.
nebulous thing.
All right, because I had sent out something telling
Excuse me?
people, I thought it was this week, but, okay. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Oh. Do you want me to say next? Okay. Okay, so one thing is I'm still a little confused on the public option for speaking at ad hoc committees versus workshops. So if that could be cleared up, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so I was told that you guys have stopped listening to me. So what I thought I would do is feed back to you some of your own words next. So this is from someone who's on the dais. I have protected that individual's identity because I believe that all of you hopefully would agree with the words. Okay, so communication is very key. Involving the community in the how and why of decision making is critical for a community because number one, it will build trust. The individual went on to say, I often see a disconnect in this area. That was 3 years ago, and I would say that we have the same situation today. Next. So transparency and accountability for action are absolutely crucial for our leadership. Yes. What does it mean? It means that you deal with matters in a way that is open, easy to see, understand, and inspect. It means that the people of our community are welcome to ask questions without being mocked by the city attorney about the choices that our city makes. People of Turlock need their representatives to exemplify these traits. Next. No, went to one more. Okay. So citizens must come first. Open communication is a key part of any relationship, including the dialogue between our city council and those they represent. Before you can act on our behalf, The council must be available and truly listen to what our needs are. Next. Next. Sorry. That's okay. Thank you. Well, okay. Could be. Okay. Our city needs and deserves leadership that they feel confident will operate openly and have their best interest in mind. I would say one of the problems with that is the work that you've done on roads and on homelessness. Done it behind closed doors. For 8 months on roads, you had meetings and you got scammed, okay? MBI turned out to be a fiasco. When it comes to the homeless, I'm going to show you a picture of Custom Containers 915. You got scammed there too. You need to be open and communicate to the people. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Julie.
What time is it?
Hi, Mary Jackson again. There you go. I think there's a theme tonight that the majority of people who have spoken are frustrated with the lack of communication, the lack of noticing. And I say this at every school board meeting. I'm going to put my school board hat on as a school board member. Not everyone is on social media or the internet. And in fact, when you're trying to pass a bond levy, the majority, I would say half of the people that vote for your bond levy, that you want to vote for your bond levy, are not getting their information from social media. They still read a newspaper. They still watch the TV news. So it's extremely frustrating when there are meetings at 5 o'clock. I asked why the meeting for the ad hoc homeless was at 5 o'clock. I don't think I've ever gotten an answer because I couldn't stay. So I'd like that answered right now. Number 2, people work. They cannot physically get here. I could sit and watch it on wherever I'm at. If I could watch and have it on Zoom and participate that way, so much easier. Just did that for TID this morning. And actually, I want to clarify, the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors, they meet the 3rd Tuesday at night. The 1st, 2nd, and 4th are during the day at 9 o'clock. So it's, and they're televised, and I believe you can comment on Zoom, I'm not sure. But it's just very frustrating. I want to be able to do a PowerPoint because I can do that too. So it would be nice that that opportunity is given to every member of the public. Kudos to Mr. Bridegroom. Again, there is a theme that we're not being heard, listened to, or invited. And you say one thing, but your actions are speaking a lot louder than what is being said. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Debbie Holkoff now. I just want to say I really would like to see the Zoom come back. It's so important. I'm like Milt. I like to get on a train, but I still like to know what's going on. It's not the same watching you at home on YouTube. It's important to be here because you pick up a lot of things when you're here, and you guys are doing a great job. I think you're inspiring the community to come out and be involved, and it's not just one person. You're 8 people that are collectively trying to improve our city. So I thank you, and I thank Chief for everything that he's doing. We're frustrated with the homeless situation. I wonder, we have the cameras in the parks, and yet there is the same people. I have a very limited area that I travel in Turlock, so Denier Park is my reference, and Gear Road. And I wonder, why is it that it's the same people day after day, night after night, hanging out in the park? But back to the Zoom. just bring it back. You know, it would give people an opportunity to be involved, and it would also show that you really are interested in hearing from the public. And I know that each and every one of you really care about our community, and I thank you for that.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Thomas Hall. I represent Turlock Gospel Mission. I just want to briefly share a report for the month of August for some of the things that we were able to do for our community. We have for total meals given to our guests for the month of August, it's just over 4,000. For total night lodgings for the month of August, it's just over 1,600. And we have seen 42 unique first-time guests. These are first-time homeless individuals, and from these numbers, many of them are families, first-time homeless on the streets, looking for housing. And of all of our guests in our shelter, we have 10 individuals that are now working, found stable work, saving up money for, moving into permanent housing. And I just want to really quick share, we had an individual who she just needed somewhere to stay. We helped her with that, where she had a place to sleep at night, and she was able to take advantage of behavioral health services. She was able to utilize her degree and find a very great job to where she started saving up money, and then she found housing. And this is just one of the success stories we had, and this is just one individual from the month of August. And part of our services also for the meals given, that was just over 4,000, but we also partner with the local food bank, and on a monthly basis we see over 100 individuals who utilize that service. And most of them are not homeless. They are just on the edge of that poverty line where they utilize that service. We also have a culinary program where we have a group of individuals utilizing that. They do things with a chef. They learn, they cook, they develop skills to then turn that into a job, turn that into income to find housing. This is all just part of what we do to help individuals restore relationships with God, family, and the community, and we look forward to the future working with the city to help serve our community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Lori, I'm sorry, I thought yours was for the. Okay, okay, apologies, no.
So you guys talked about how you want to do more community things, and I'm all for that. When I first learned about city council things and such like that, my first interaction with it was actually going to an event that Andrew held. It was at a church, and I was just myself and a few of my friends because I didn't want to go alone because I was nervous. And through that, we were able to. I talked to him one-on-one, and I had my buddies there, and we all talked about issues that we were genuinely passionate about that we wanted. Like we wanted lights fixed in what was it, Fiera Ranch Park. We talked about wanting a fireworks show back, things of that sort. And that was like my first introduction to realize, wow, this actually matters. This is really important stuff. And then from there, a few of my friends were really passionate back when, Roe versus Wade got overturned. And it wasn't really my idea, but a few of my friends were like, we really want to come out and speak on this. And they came out in droves. It was like, I don't know how many people were actually there, but it was a good crowd. And you guys completely turned them away. And most of them don't want to come back here again because of that. They don't see like, oh no, city government's useless. They're going to turn us away anyway. So if you really want to foster that kind of spirit of having people wanting to be involved, be invited. I love the idea of bringing back district meetings again. I mean, when Andrew did them, I thought they were awesome. I'd love to see that again. And just be more welcoming and inviting for all people of all backgrounds and ideas and such. Because I know something this council has struggled with in the past, at least, is being open to new ideas and younger voices and older voices and just groups in general. So just be open to all peoples in our community because we all matter at the end of the day. We all want to see the city thrive, and that's what we all really need to think about and care about. Thank you.
Anybody else? Lori.
I just want to give a little plug for the museum. Our downtown Ghost Walk tickets will go on sale September 20th at Main Street Antiques. You can call or come in. $35 a person. The actual date of the event is October 20th and 21st. Mayor, I know you braved it last year. And Councilman Franco, you were out of town. Maybe you can make it this year. But I think it's going to sell up fast. But if you can support us, we love that too. Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and close the public comment and get to the motion waiving reading of all ordinances on the agenda except by title.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco? Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you. Action item 5D has been pulled from the agenda, and G? No, D is off, and 5G is pulled. I hadn't got there yet. So D, David, off. G, George, wow, is going to be pulled. And are there any others? If not,
Motion to approve as amended?
motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. All right, the item 5G is reappropriating monies, sewer construction, North Golden State Boulevard. And Director Schultz, I'll go ahead and let you just kind of hang out for a second. And we'll open it to the public and get the question from Milt.
Yes, I wanted us to take a look at this 5G because I think it's very important that you understand what happened and what's going on. We were doing the work on North Golden State, and the project was delayed. And the delay source was many private developers along the construction work approved staff with requests for water and sewer stubs to their property. Okay, so private developers along the construction work area wanted to have water and sewer stubs to their property. Staff facilitated this request by suspending work with the Rel Construction Incorporated of Atwater roadway rehabilitation work and allowed private owners time to apply and receive approval of encroachment permits to hire a contractor to perform utility stub work. So what this did, this delayed the whole project. And this, because it delayed the whole project, now, and it allowed the private owners to install their facilities prior to paving the roadway, now we have to come back and we have to use our enterprise funds, meaning sewer funds and meaning water funds, that we pay because we are the citizens who pay our rates. So this is costing us money so we could subsidize these private developers so they could get their work done. They should be paying this price, not the enterprise funds, not the citizens of Turlock. And since the private developers delayed the construction work, it's their responsibility to pay for this delay. And it amounts to $693,000 approximately. And I have one other request. Since these developers on there, I request that Mayor Bublak recluse herself from this vote because of conflict of interest. Thank you.
Can you just tell me what the conflict is? Milt? I can't recuse myself if I don't know what you're talking about. Who?
Receiving donations from some of the contractors. Thank you.
I still don't know what you're talking about, but okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to this, please? Well, let's get the conversation. It might stop it. He asked to pull it, so we're not.
There's no backup. G is not in the book.
G's not in the book?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've looked twice. I'm looking online.
Can we hear?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Here we go. This is asking for reappropriation of money. This isn't new money. This was money that was already budgeted for the project. And unfortunately, as we were going through our budget process early in the year, we were under the impression that we're going to finish the project on time. And unfortunately, we did not. There were a list of reasons why we didn't. The hookups for private businesses was one of them, but it wasn't the main reason that we did not make the timeline. So this is not new money, just reappropriation of the money that was budgeted previously that didn't get carried over, kind of just a cleanup item for us.
Okay, you have questions still, let's go ahead.
Did the developer, excuse me, did the.
Would you, hold on, sir. We're doing some questions, we're doing backwards. I'll let you speak, but please don't be, like, just calm. We can do this.
Did the landowners that connected pay fees?
They paid their own fees, yes.
And that is part, that's not in this particular fund, but is it going to be transferred?
Through the tax sharing MOU, it should be, yes.
Other questions from council?
Yeah, just so I'm clear, the ratepayers did not pay and pick up the tab for private owners to get hookups on their private property.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
They negotiated with their own contractors.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back to the public.
My apologies, I didn't realize we were changing the format in which previously it had been all public comments first, and then someone comes up and answers them afterwards. I didn't realize that we've changed that format. Having said that, so I guess I can get someone to just have a dialogue with me if that's the way we're changing it. It seemed to me, just looking there, that the original reason for this hookup was to help the county with some projects they have outside of the city limits. And part of the thing is they have to go to the nearest city and do that. Having said that, it looked to me like Turlock picked up the entire cost of this thing for the county. Why did the county not reimburse us? And also, I understand that the private owners paid their fees. However, because it was a delay of that, there were some additional costs beside their fees, and why aren't they being held accountable for at least a portion of that? Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's back there, but it's not tapped.
Okay, so, but it's there, okay.
My apologies.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we'll close public comment. Can you answer Bob's question?
First part of the question was about the tax sharing, and that was covered in the MOU that we had for the tax sharing agreement between the city for the out-of-bound water service. And I'll go back to, there were no additional fees to this delay. This is just reappropriating money that we'd already appropriated and failed to reappropriate in the next year.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Will of council on item 5G, George. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz? Mayor Bublak?
Yes, and that passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. All right, there are no final readings, and public hearings, we have one. And Ms. Quintero. It's kind of hard to get around in there. Where's the fire marshal? He's leaving.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. The item before you tonight is the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or referred to in short as the CAPER. This item is required of all HUD entitlement jurisdictions. This report covers CDBG, CDBG CV, the fund that was covered in the workshop earlier, and home funding. The CAPER reports accomplishment data from the activities undertaken through the fiscal year as they relate to the priority needs identified in the city's 5-year consolidated plan. The consolidated plan identifies public infrastructure, affordable housing, public services, community emergency response as it relates to COVID, and homeless services as high priority needs. This year, the city continued administering first-time homebuyer program for income-eligible applicants. No residents were assisted in this past fiscal year. Staff is working on looking at revisions to the first-time homebuyer program criteria to bring back for council for consideration to look at ways to change that program to make it, that we could have successful funding in the years to come. One property that was developed with 2 single-family homes was acquired, and 2 income-eligible veteran families were housed in those homes. The city closed out the rehabilitation of 1 previously purchased property. Housing rehabilitation loans and grants were continued to be offered to both owner and renter occupied homes. 1 combined loan and grant was issued, and the construction was completed for the homeowner rehabilitation project. 7 public service grants were awarded to nonprofit agencies to provide assistance to low and moderate income individuals. 773 unduplicated individuals were assisted. Such services such as emergency shelter, senior meals, emergency food boxes, youth recreation programs were items that were funded. Staff is asking for council to authorize the submittal of this fiscal year 22-23 CAPER to HUD. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Director Quintero? Go ahead.
Okay, just reiterating, this report is one of the mandates to HUD on our progress for what we did for 22-23 year end, and we have to do this in order to get future funding.
That's correct. This has to be submitted by the end of September before to be eligible. So we, with this report, tried to bring it as early as we could. It is hard with getting everything closed out at the end to get the finances. So yes, to be eligible in the upcoming, we need to submit the CAPER report to HUD.
What's the current level of interest for our first-time home buyer loans? Do we have anybody, especially with the interest rates going up, is there anybody new coming forward to want our first-time home buyer loans?
We definitely get a lot of inquiries about it. We have some pending applications. Self-help enterprises is in construction, so we definitely have some applications that are in review related to that project specifically. I think that in working with our interim housing manager and then the real estate agent that has come on, we've been looking at there's some of the criteria as far as the percentages and ratios and the amount that is allowed in the program currently that make it, when we do get inquiries, very hard to get people that then qualify and can purchase at the rates that we see. So have been researching other cities' criteria to look at something that we could bring back to council for consideration that we think could get the program where then people that are coming in could qualify and make it a successful program. So there is interest, but it is hard to get people to qualify.
That's our criteria or the consortium criteria or HUD criteria?
Right now it's consortium-wide criteria, but it is set by Turlock as the lead.
Okay.
So it would be criteria that could come back to council to look to be modified.
HUD would allow us to make changes to that criteria to make it more palatable for people to take advantage of those loans?
That is correct.
Okay. So we only got 1 last year? I think it said we had 1 first-time home,
No first-time home
No
buyers.
first-time home buyers, but we had 1 person come forward with the rehabs?
One that was a completed project. So we've had others that are, this report, what gets reported to HUD are only projects that are deemed completed or
Complete.
closed out.
Okay.
So we've had 1 homeowner rehab that the entire construction was completed on that. We've had other inquiries, people working on going out to bid. We have other loans and grants that have been approved, but for this last fiscal year, only 1 that was completely through the process.
Okay, so this is a completed projects report.
Correct.
The property that we have for the single single property, 2 homes were on it. Both of those were for vets. I
Correct.
believe. They're currently, occupied by veterans?
Yes.
And who runs that? Does the city of Turlock run that, or did we require it be,
We've
contracted out?
worked with a agency that houses veterans for the placement of the tenants. Right now, the city is managing that property. That is one that we put out an RFP for transfer of those properties, and so that is something we're working on to bring back to council for consideration of ultimately transferring the management of those units. So
Okay, so the
currently,
city of Turlock actually gets the rent monies every
correct.
Single-family home that's still owned by the city of Turlock, are we still managing our own rental, or is the new real estate company managing it? Do we have it going to a,
The city's housing staff is managing it currently until such time if it's chosen to be transferred.
and then I'm gonna ask again, when are we gonna see the, revision to the 23-24 plan? Third ask.
It will probably be the first meeting in October, I think is what we're targeting, the 10th? Is that the?
All right. Yeah, I think I will stop there with my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Quintero?
Yeah, Ms. Quintero, any idea how other cities are doing with this program? And, I mean, it seems like a colossal failure if we can only, and I'm not toward you, I'm just saying the program itself. If there's one program that or, one, project is completed, I would think that the Fed's gotta be looking at this thinking, we gotta do something different. Is there any talk that way, or, I mean, are other cities having the same problem we are?
The first-time home buyer, I think that is a program that universally there is harder to get qualified, but I think if we look at changing our criteria, we could see an increase, definitely more than 0. With the rehab, funding, it is something that we've seen an increase, we've sent out, it's, with the council direction, a program to focus on more, so I think that if we look at, as part of what we're working out on with Cloudburst, we're looking at overall revisions to our rehab policies and procedures. So I think there's some opportunity there to bring forward other options to council that could be looked at as far as the types of terms in the loans or grants that could be awarded, that could increase the utilization of that program. So those are items that we're working with Cloudburst to also bring back for consideration as part of the policies and procedures. And then I think too, we need to get the policies and procedures in place and then do a large public outreach push to educate all of the residents that it's a program that is available. So we've done outreach with the contracting community to try to build the contractor list to get that part up. So we've sent out about 875 letters to every licensed general contractor in the county. So we've already seen an increase in interest in getting on the contractor list. So this is a long answer to say, yes, I do think that there is improvement to be made, that we could get these programs to be at a higher utilization rate if these are the areas that council would like us to focus on.
To piggyback off of his comment, when we look at page 11, it's just basically the only city, and we run the rest of the cities except for Modesto, nobody has a project. So not that we don't have our own problems with communication, but it sounds like we're not working well with the other cities. When I sit down with the mayor and ask them, did you know, and they typically don't. Now, it doesn't mean they're not talking to their own staff, but I would suggest that if we only had one person trying to get it from the whole county minus Modesto, we're probably doing something wrong.
Sure, and one, item that, again, we'd look to bring back is, been talking with Stanislaus County and trying to, with the home consortium funds, how can we better get those funds out consortium-wide? And so the concept that we would like to propose to bring back to council is, with the funds, so we still have, as the lead, have home funds that we still will be managing, and we also have the home ARP funds that we manage as the lead. And so one concept would be to issue an RFP consortium-wide with that funding, those criteria, that then all of the consortium members essentially could have projects that could bid on that. So, working with the county as they'll be switching to the lead, but to come with ideas of the consortium of how the funding could be pushed out consortium-wide better.
Any other questions?
I thought I was finished, but I'm not.
You're not.
Question regarding leveraging. It's on page 13. The consortium has to match a 25 cents on the dollar, and we have 4,666,000 of matching funding. So, can we propose an $18.6 million project? Math of the 4.6 times 4, which would be the 18.6. It'd be nice to do a project. You can do a really nice apartment type complex with $18.6 million. But where can that additional $13 million come from? Can we utilize the consortium money in addition to the 4.6 that is the match?
So the 4.6 is carryover match credit
Right.
that we have, so it's not.
So that's that could be our 25 cents on the dollar matching.
Correct, as a credit towards match that we don't have to come up with additional match, but it's not $4.6 million of funding that can be spent.
It's already in that. It's already in the consortium money.
That was credits that were already spent. So this is money
Already spent.
from projects that.
Avina Bella.
Yes, projects like Avina Bella where there was already a mix of funding with home.
So we're upside down on the matches?
We essentially have a credit on the match, and so it's not funding that can be used,
Okay.
actual money that can be spent on a project, but it is to say, if we do a project, we could start essentially not having to have that additional match because we have excess match credit as far as HUD is concerned. So it would allow for other agencies, in the consortium, if we chose to do that. A lot of the difficulty that other cities in the consortium have is coming up with a match fund.
Right.
Because all the other cities are not a CDBG entitlement community, and so having that match has been difficult. With this excess match, other communities in the consortium could use that, and so if they would not have to come up with that other 25% essentially, but it's not $4.6 million that we have that we can add to spend on a project.
So it's credit towards matching other funds. Gotcha.
Correct.
I'll bring that back up in my comments.
Okay.
Okay, hold that. Let's open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this object?
So for the first time home buyer thing, I really like the idea of that program because I don't own a home yet, but one day I'd like to, and a resource like that could be great. I just think it sounds like the issue is just communication. I mean, the city has social media, just make it like a monthly post so it's something you can just always put out there to remind people because a lot of these people will be on the younger side, I assume, trying to buy their first home. So put it on social media. That's a way for them to access it. Put a link to the website and they can find it easier. So then they can go through the process and start getting it through. And it sounds like, at least from the way you're describing, it sounds like the city's creating barriers in this case. I think the city shouldn't create barriers at all for this. Keep it as open as possible. So it's a streamlined process for people trying to do this. Because I don't want government to be in the way of people trying to get their first home if they do need that kind of assistance. Anyway, thank you.
Anyone else?
So again, Mary Jackson. The first-time home buyers program used to be quite successful. Ms. Quintero, or in the past, maybe pre-pandemic, at least since I've been paying attention for about the last 20 years. So how many people are actually working on this or in housing? Ms. Quintero, sorry. Anyway.
I'll let you answer.
Okay, let me finish.
Yeah,
Okay, you'll answer. Thank you, I appreciate that, because I still don't know why we met at 5 o'clock for the ad hoc committee for the homeless. Oh, shoot, I didn't take my right paper. Okay, so number one, self-help that is going on over there between Linwood and Montana. It looks like to be about 14 homes. Why can't we replicate that? And why don't we have more of them? I don't understand why we're not working with Avena Bella. There were more than 5 times the number of applicants for that low-income housing. It's run well. I know students and families that live there that play soccer with my children, and it's beautiful. And so why are we not replicating that? I want to clear up, is there going to be a general plan meeting on October 10th to discuss the general plan? And I don't understand, I really am confused and actually saddened why people are not using the first-time home buyers program. In the past, this has been extremely successful, and so there's got to be a reason. And unlike the previous speaker, social media is not the only way to get the information out. And I don't understand why people aren't using the money for rehab. But these issues all tie into what we're going to talk about with transitional housing or the homeless. I really ask you to go and try to find a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home or an apartment on the first floor, especially for a senior person, they're not going to climb upstairs. Try to find an apartment right now. Try to find one for under $2,000 or actually even $1,400. There is a duplex or triplex across from Osborne Elementary. I think it's $1,600 for 2-bedroom, 1-bath. I could be wrong. We don't have low-income housing, and we haven't built it since we lost that and redevelopment funding when Governor Brown had to balance the budget. And in my opinion, the city, when I was on the council, misspent redevelopment money anyway because we funded Joe Debley and artificial turf. But I'm not going to go there. We need to build or find a way to probably build at least 3 more of those self-helps, and you might have people who can apply to be first-time home buyers. And it's all connected. Thank you.
Anyone else? You're taking those down, right, questions?
Yeah.
Evening. Yeah, some comments off the cuff. I've talked about self-help enterprises before. I think that would be something, I almost hate saying it because it kind of sounds like we're, coordinating things, and we're not, okay? The idea of people using their own sweat labor to build their own homes. I know DJ and I went over there one time, and we talked to the supervisor, and he told us what they were doing. It's quite impressive in my mind, okay? And this is the type of stuff that I think we should encourage. And kind of related to that is maybe the opposite of it in terms of some of the transitional housing facilities that we build. Are they really transitional, or do they effectively become permanent supportive housing? And you probably know about the couple that I have told you all about, the family of 6 that was in the place on Soderquist that we bought and then gave to Family Promise. Now, they were there, Family Promise in the presentation in 2019 when this was approved said that people would be there for up to 24 months, okay? So that family was there for 3 years before they were evicted. I have questions about how you could evict someone. And also another side comment is that since they're now having to either get housing vouchers or live in their car on the street, it's actually costing the taxpayer more than what the rent would have been. But so they were there for 3 years. The family, single parent with 2 kids, is in the apartment next to them. They have been there for over 3 years, going on 4 years. So I think we need, accounting of what is going on. And we need to find ways of encouraging people incentives to encourage them to better their lives rather than incentives to kind of stay where they are, because if they better their lives, then they're no longer going to meet the income requirement, and they're going to lose this nice, wonderful apartment and have to go out in the real world where everybody else is. So, yeah, I blubbered enough. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we will close the public comment, and if you would, try and get those questions answered.
Sure. I think I gave the impression that the city was putting barriers to the first-time home buyer. I think it's really just not barriers, looking at the criteria that were established. And so they are loans or grants, and so they are fashioned in a way to also ensure that the borrower, that it makes that there's not an easy incentive for someone to walk away, that there's then not funding back in the program. But the amounts and the limits haven't been looked at or adjusted for a while. The market has changed, and so that's where we think that, it is timely to look at those. But, again, so not barriers, but really looking at the market and what would make sense financially. And so that's some analysis that's being done. How many people are in the housing division? There are 3 permanent full-time staff. Mr. Fagan, that was here earlier, is here as the interim housing manager, filling in as a part-time annuitant. The manager position is currently vacant and out for recruitment. And then myself as the director, help with the department as well. Projects like the self-help project, the Avina Vela project, if we did move forward with putting out RFPs for expenditure of some of the funding that we have as far as in the home fund could be tailored to, projects of that nature, depending upon what council's desire was. The meeting on the 10th is not related to the general plan. That would be looking at the amendment to the annual action plan that would be specific to the changes in the allocation to the home funds as council asked to be brought back. And I think I've hit on everything. If there's any questions that I missed.
All right. Back for some comments. You have some, I know.
Yeah. I know we don't ever seem to be able to complete or even come close to getting our annual action plan close to our expectations. So I think we need to bring it back to council and let's rework the annual action plan. I liked what was done for the earlier presentation, where we had a list of things, and that's one of the things I've been asking for, is to give us a list for each one of the baskets of money that we have. What can we do with this particular basket of money? Having that list makes it really easy from my standpoint to say, okay, this is what we can do, and this is what, if it's not on the list, we can't do it with this funds, because we're always getting, well, you need to fix the roads. Well, we can't fix the roads with home consortium money. So I think a list that says what we can do will help on that. I know we need to engage the consortium members better. I'm on Shaw, and they ask me, how do we get the money? Well, your staff should be letting you know. Well, we don't ever see a presentation, we don't know. Well, yes, that should be their staff's job, but maybe we need to be a little more creative with our outreach to the other consortium members. So maybe we need to do a presentation at their council meetings, or maybe we do a presentation to staff members in the consortium. I'm not sure. I just know that we need to do better outreach on that aspect, because if we're spending 100% of these funds in Turlock, then we're taking on 100% of the consortium members' low-income housing responsibilities, and that's, number one, not our responsibility, and number two, it's not fair for the other cities. So I'd really like to see us reach out and help. As far as the, going back to the funding for, leveraging, I think that in other cities too, we can find a bigger piece of property for less expense, so we have little to none in Turlock, but maybe there's something in Ceres, Houston, Riverbank, one of the other cities in the consortium that we can say, hey, we can go and we can get this piece of property, we can utilize our money, we can leverage our money and put another Avena Bella. Maybe it's not gonna be in Turlock, but all of the consortium members, citizens can go to that and apply. We have people in Avena Bella that came from a lot of other cities in the consortium, so that's a way maybe we can utilize some of that money for low income and get some consortium, members working with us.
Does the concept of kind of a consortium-wide RFP, would that meet kind of what you're looking at?
I think so. I think so. And just as long as we get some electeds, with some knowledge, because they have no idea about the consortium money. Their staff maybe does, but the electeds look at me like I am crazy when I say, you know, you have consortium money out there that you can also apply for.
I'd like to echo some of those comments that, you know, reading this and seeing the very small numbers compared to what our goals were, which, you know, it makes me wonder, is it an issue with what we thought we could do, or is it really an issue of the operations of the, you know, what led to those completed projects? But it's a little disheartening to know when we get these reports that show there's so much need for different types of housing and different levels of housing that we weren't able to do more in this calendar year. I understand it's limited by completed projects, but I too am intrigued by doing, you know, your suggestion of a county consortium-wide RFQ for seeing what's out there, and Turlock being an entitlement entity for CDBG, you know, we could utilize our funds for projects in Turlock as well, because we'll no longer be the lead of the majority of the home funds. We'll still have to continue for a very long time being the lead with whatever's left. But I would like to see, you know, us utilize what we have to do, what our responsibilities going forward are the home funds. You know, let's try to mirror what's happening with the county so we can be a good leader and a good partner to these other cities, while also engaging with our partners here so we can make, you know, rental or different levels of housing available here, because that's a huge need, just consortium wide, including Interlock.
And I would just say that I feel like, we just keep changing the date on it, and I don't feel like we're getting there, so I like that we're having some different dialogue here, cause we need to start, not using the same verbiages. There must be some way to do this a little different, cause, you know, if you keep doing it the same way, then we're obviously we're not doing it right. So, what is the will of council?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Quintero. You're up for the next one as well?
Yes.
All right, item 8A, rescinding the resolution on the container 915. Hi, Paul.
I assisted with the preparing the.
Congratulations.
Bringing it back up.
She's asked me to come up here and assist if
Yes,
necessary.
thank you, Paul. So the item before council tonight is a request to rescind Resolution 2023-087. This resolution was approved by the city council on April 11th, and authorized the city manager to negotiate a ground lease agreement with Custom Containers 915 for the development of transitional housing units for homeless veterans and seniors on the city-owned property at 701 South Walnut Road. After further evaluation and consultation with Custom Containers, their staff and the consultants that they had working with them, it was determined for the project to be viable, a majority of the housing units developed would have to be designated as permanent supportive housing instead of transitional housing. And so, as this was contrary to the priority that was set by council and adopted in that resolution for the project, staff's bringing this item back to council for reconsideration. and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions for Ms. Quintero?
Yes, I have a question. A few. So, did Containers 915, let me start that over again. When this came up in April, a lot of the discussion, a lot of the urgency at that time was trying to apply for state home key funds, because there was like a time limit. I didn't look it up again, but I think it was the end of June when we had to get that together. So did this project ever make it to the application stage of home key?
Sorry, I should have explained that further. The really consultation and work with Containers 915 and their consultant was working on and in preparation of the home key application. So there was a technical assistance meeting that was held with the HCD staff, as was required by home key, and then I do believe Containers 915 was and their consultants were continuing to work and engage with the home key staff, and so it was ultimately in that evaluation that Containers 915 was doing in pursuing the home key that is what was determined that, ultimately for it to be a viable application, the complete, all of the units being transitional would not be a viable application.
And can you expand a little bit on what the limitations were that were discovered by Containers 915? Was it only financial? Was it something else in our requirements, et cetera?
Yeah, my, main understanding from Containers 915, they were working on seeking vouchers that would place base vouchers that would fund the units for the ongoing operational costs. They were not able to secure very many committed vouchers, and so to really show that the ongoing operational costs could be funded without having the vouchers in place, it made the project operationally not viable as transitional housing.
And when I, was learning that this project couldn't go forward anymore as transitional as it was intended, I went back to the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability, back from the home key, and they, spell out a lot of different reasons why interim housing would be funded through that program. I understand it didn't get to that level, but did we get the privilege of any of the analysis from HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, on interim housing? Because it depends on our point in time count and shelter availability and the pathways out of transitional housing into permanent housing. Did we get to learn anything about that?
A lot of that portion of the information on the application, we were still working on gathering the data on the bed counts and things. I think that Containers 915 did, also have some mention of needing to be able to show a transition from how to get out of transitional, and so that could have been another part of needing to show some part permanent, but I think my impression from the consultant, the main issue was the viability with the vouchers.
Other questions? Okay, let's open it to the public. Sorry, Ms. Quintero, Ms.
Got it?
You shouldn't have changed the rules.
Is that,
You shouldn't have changed the rules.
what did I change?
I'm sorry.
What did I do?
No, not what you did.
Oh.
But,
Sometimes I just go on the fly, right? So,
well, yeah. So you want me to say next, or when? Oh, okay. Okay, so, CC 915, okay, so in March of 2022, they got, an award of $4.42 million from, Home Key Phase 2, for, R Street, veteran, housing there for, permanent supportive housing. Next, please. It was supposed to be completed in, the winter of 2022. I did talk to, Mr. Glavin, and, we had weather, so, it made sense
you
that
didn't
it.
talk to him recently, right?
No, I talked to him, April
He
8th.
passed away.
Oh, he did? Well, that may answer the question of the next
Okay,
slide then.
good,
Okay, so the next slide, I went by there on Labor Day, and that's the site.
There you go.
So that answers that question.
Okay.
Okay, next one, please. Okay, so there's some confusion, at least in my mind. We were talking about that, I'm sorry to hear that. About him. You know, that Turlock doesn't have robust enough transitional housing to meet the court's legal requirements for enforcing our ordinances, and that was some of the rationale behind developing this project. Next, please. But in May, City Manager Wilson talked at Shaw, and he talked about how we were constructing an interim housing facility. They're not going to have people sign leases, you know, so that if they cause problems, we can evict them. Next, please. However, that, as was pointed out on April 11th, conflicts with the housing requirements of HUD and Home Key. So next. So I'm kind of seeing a conflict here. On one hand, you're trying to say, well, it's not transitional housing, it's going to be some other type of interim housing. But then you also want to try to use it with the federal courts to defend that it actually is transitional housing and following the housing first requirements. And I don't see how you can play both sides of the equation here. It doesn't seem to balance out. So there's many of us who really feel that this has been a massive waste of time and resources, and instead, we recommend you focus on identifying those individuals who are voluntarily homeless and enforce your ordinances. And that, you know, goes back to the Sacramento case of a week or two ago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
This is more a general approach, caring for the poor. We have homeless people on the streets here in Turlock. We have mentally ill people here on the streets in Turlock. What would Jesus say if he were to walk into the council meeting tonight? He might say this: Jesus blesses the righteousness, not for feeding the poor, but for feeding him. But they cannot recall the event. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? Jesus replies, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. By contrast, the wicked are surprised, but in the opposite manner. Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger or needing clothes, or sick or in prison and did not help you? Jesus replies, I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Here's what we have with some people in Turlock. It's money, power, and pleasure that they strive for. Oh, I need a bigger home. I've got to have a new car. I must have new clothes. Yes, Turlock has many hypocritical people who are only concerned about their self and their own selfishness. So what do some people in Turlock say? They look at another verse, not what Jesus said, but what St. Paul said. Whoever refuses to work and is not allowed to eat is not allowed to eat. We say this because we hear there are some people among us who live lazy lives and do nothing except meddle in other people's business. Paul goes on to say, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we command these people and warn them to lead orderly lives and work to earn their own living. So my question is, who do you listen to? Jesus Christ or Paul? Only you can answer this question.
Anyone else? closed the public comment, and, there was question on the board about the, Mr. Bragdon put up. Can you,
I believe, and City Attorney Petrolakis can correct me if I'm wrong, I think from the enforcement standpoint, the goal of the transitional housing, there are people that are in emergency shelters that have been there a longer time than what it would be considered emergency shelter, but there is not that next step of housing for people that are ready to move into transitional. So the, goal of transitional housing would be for those that are ready to move to the next step out of emergency shelter, which then would also free additional space in the emergency shelter that have people that are there that are longer than what you would typically see as an emergency shelter standpoint.
okay. What is the dialogue here?
Well, I was a no vote before, and my feelings really haven't changed. I still think the project's too expensive, so I'm still a no.
Gotcha.
To be clear, tonight, the action is just, we are turning the page on this project, right? So a yes vote tonight would be for moving beyond this project.
To rescind, yes.
To rescind, okay, yes. I was a yes vote, back in April. I was skeptical. I came into that meeting very skeptical about what the plan was, because there was a lot of information that I was hoping to still gather. And, I think I still come tonight with that same intention that we need to learn from this experience, and, not completely close the book on this transitional housing, but let's turn the page and find a new chapter. And what I mean by that is, I think we need to really assess whether it's through an ad hoc committee meeting or it's through a workshop with all of us, or however we plan to do that going forward. What kind, I wanna be able to answer for all of us and for the public, what kind of housing is appropriate? What's the most appropriate location for this type of housing? Is it really gonna be the will of the community and this council to have projects like this? Because from the enforcement standpoint, I am under the impression, and I think the public is too, that we need this type of housing in order to be able to meet federal regulatory requirements, so we can deal with the issues that we're seeing with homelessness here. So I don't know if that means, us contacting the State Department of Housing and Community Development to get a better understanding of what are the requirements for these types of projects going forward. I don't know if that means engaging with our partners at the county to figure out what, help us understand what our needs are, what our constraints, how we can make some progress in the vast need of not having the right types of housing for people who want to get out of their current situation in homelessness.
So, I have a couple things. First, what would Jesus do? He would not judge anyone else. Cast that stone, right? Anyway, I did write to one of the people in this community right after I cast my yes vote, with the understanding that I said I wanted to be clear. I voted for a structure that I consider to be an accountability structure. If we learn that it cannot be that, I would want it to be brought back and we could vote on it again, which we're doing right now. And I wanted to let the process and the staff show us what we can and can't do. Patience is difficult. However, we lose nothing by trying for the grant. Nothing compels us to accept it. And that's exactly where we are today. I submitted that to someone right after the vote within a couple days, and here we are, and I'm living that as we are. I myself went out with Councilmember Moniz. We told the public in that area that this would be transitional. It would not be permanent. And they actually agreed to it. They said, okay, we get you. That makes sense. And when I spoke to Mr. Kelso about a week ago, he said, I think transitional is fine. I go, well, I think it sounds like we can't do that. And he's like, oh, then no, we don't want that. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep my word, as I always will. Here's where we'll do. We'll bring it back, and if you can come. He couldn't come tonight because he's vacation or something. Well served. But for that, I'm not gonna go forward on this. Yes, every time we have a meeting that has opportunities for housing or whatever, we're gonna hear from everyone. That's, I don't think that those positions should be in an ad hoc or something. That needs to be right here, a workshop or just a council meeting. But for me, I'm an absolute, let me rescind my vote from previous, cause this isn't what I voted for. Sure.
You usually let me go before you.
I do, but I was just compelled.
It's okay. I was that other yes vote, and I did so, I voted yes because I was informed and believed that this was for transitional housing. And what Mayor said is true. We went out, we met with all the businesses on Walnut, from Linwood all the way down to West Main, and everybody out there, after we met, in the district, supported transitional housing, but not on a permanent. And I told folks that this was transitional, not permanent, and I need to undo that. It's not okay.
Okay, so what is the will of council then? We have a motion and a second to rescind the resolution of previous, on the ground lease. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you both for being up there. Moving on to 8B, let's talk cannabis. Let's talk Columbia Pool. Let's talk appropriations of monies. Let's talk. I don't know.
8B pertains to Columbia Pool, as you said. And staff are asking, the action staff are requesting is to appropriate funding awarding the bid and approving an agreement between Bobo Construction, Inc. of Elk Grove. The city only received one bidder for this project, and it was Bobo Construction. They came in at $5,770,695. Staff did review this bid for responsiveness and responsibility and recommends approval of this agreement. The budget for this project has had a little bit of change to it. I'm gonna go through it step by step. All costs incurred to this date, which include preliminary engineering, design, and demolition, is $633,141. The construction contract is $5,770,695. The contingency for the project is $350,000. Construction engineering, that's city staff, construction management, and remaining services from Odell, $215,000. Building permits, 10. Material testing, $44,654. Construction surveying, $25,485. The purchase of the office, lifeguard, concession, storage, and restroom buildings from public restroom was $1,941,684. And purchase for the pool mechanical building from Romtech was $112,426. To date, $6,907,720 has been allocated to fund 301 capital improvements across the fiscal years of 22-23 and 23-24. I'll give you a breakdown of the revenue sources on that. We have $3 million from ARPA, $3,710,456 from cannabis, $197,246 from the TID grant, giving us our total budget of $6,907,720. And we are requesting appropriations of $2,168,367. Of this number, $1,363,368 is requested from Fund 117 Cannabis, and the remaining $805,000 from Fund 119. A little bit about the contractor. This contractor has pretty good experience in the pool business. They have 4 different projects that they've done that are commercial-sized pools. The first one was an aquatics complex renovation project in Fairfield. The second one was a high school aquatics complex. The third one that they just completed was an athletics and pool complex in Livermore, and they're currently working on an aquatics center in Mountain View. So although I'm disappointed that we only have one bidder, I'm really happy to hear that this bidder is qualified for paperwork. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions for Director Schultz? Vice Mayor?
I know there was a pre-bid meeting that you held, and you only had one contractor come into it, and he didn't decide he wanted to even bid the project. Why wasn't the pre-bid meeting mandatory?
They're not mandatory.
No, it's pretty standard in the industry
That they are?
that they are mandatory, yeah.
I'm
Just
not sure.
curious. In the contract, the time frame to finish is 95 working days. Do you consider that a little tight? I know there's a clause in there that if they
There'll
go
be room
over-
to negotiate that.
Yeah, 95 days. The other contractor said one of the reasons he wasn't gonna bid was because 11 months was his time frame, not anywhere close to that.
That's correct.
It's probably 95 days, I think is a little. Really
96 is acceptable.
96, yeah,
No more.
you know. Question for Isaac. What is the balance right now in our cannabis public benefit account? Do you know? I know we used it, part of it for something, but we should be building that back up, that 5% that we put over.
You don't have it on top of your head?
Oh, come on.
I'm gonna do my best. So concluding the fiscal year, we had about a 1.3, 1.2 in the reserves for that fiscal year. We're picking up a little bit more in the current fiscal year because when we did our budget process, we didn't have that additional dispensary open. So now we're factoring that into the current revenue stream as well. So that's how we're picking up that additional cannabis funds.
Right, but the benefit, the 5% that we put away for education.
So the benefit, the 2.5% is carved out and is not part of that component. That is just the
Right,
5%
right.
factor.
Do we know how much is
That
in
is
that
about
account?
just over $100,000, probably about $100,000 to $150,000. Because we're usually estimating about 50,000 coming into that factor.
Because the pool is for kids, is there a way that we can use that money for this project?
And they teach kids how to swim.
We could definitely look into that. I mean, I do agree it's a kid factor as well, so we can definitely have that conversation on what
there's a
that looks
big
like.
kid factor there, yeah.
I think we're meeting the overall budget with that, with current revenue stream that we have.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Director Moreno, if you could stay up there for just a second, and since there's a resolution that talks about $923,000, but then that's not in the math in the rest of this, then we talked about this before, but
Correct.
if you could explain for everyone who doesn't speak accounting, what does that mean? Cause that came up earlier today, so, just thank you.
So when you look at the resolutions and transactions that are currently happening, so you got to take a step back. What has occurred? We've been putting money aside year after year and putting it into a pot and how it occurs, right? But during the budget process, what do? We try to allocate that money and appropriate it so that it's there. Within the budget process, we appropriate or budgeted $5.4 million, right? The project and the total completion of the project is a different number. So what's happening is two things. One, you're appropriating money to conclude the project. That is the ARPA money and the cannabis money. The actual other revenue is actually just bringing that money from reserves back into the budget line item. So it's an accounting mechanism, not a funding mechanism. So that's primarily what you're seeing from that number. That's why that number's not matching your overall budget aspects. It's not supposed to because money's already been allocated with that 5.4. It's basically bringing that budget number up to where it needs to be.
Other comments? Dumb questions, my bad. Wow.
Director Schultz, what does this do to my May 1 opening date for my kids?
This is, due to the timing of this budget, this is gonna line us up to be open May 1. That's our goal.
Pinky promise? Because all my kids are at home right now listening to you.
Full thumb.
And they're gonna hold you to it.
That's our goal. I mean, we could
Well,
run
we
into
gave
any,
May
we
2nd.
can run into any kind of issues that come up, but the goal that the contractor has is May 1st. That's what we've been trying to meet this whole time.
So we can have them work at night too.
We'll have lights, correct?
The time is of the essence in the contract?
Yes.
All right, let's open it to the public.
I want clause. I want it in writing and signed off.
This Columbia Pool project has been talked about for years. When Gil Ascare was our council member for District 2, he was very adamant about taking care of the Columbia Pool. There were many things that were investigated to see what could be done and perform this in a manageable presentation. However, as we got our new council members, there was a lack of interest in the Columbia Pool. So they drug their feet, and they really didn't want anything to take place. And the way they did that is by just not letting it continue on. It held it back. These same people complained about West Main Street and about how Gil, who always wanted West Main Street to go earlier than later, held it back. Gil did not hold it back. But people on this council held back the Columbia Pool. Now, why would they do that? Well, I don't know, but I know why they stopped doing that, because we had an adamant pastor in Turlock who said, hey, you're not going to do this to the west side. I don't care what you think, the west side deserves something. And lo and behold, this council got behind it. And lo and behold, we're going to get a pool. Of course, it's going to cost millions of dollars more than it would have if we had done it on Gil's schedule 5 years or more ago, but that's the way things happen. This is politics, this is Turlock, this is reality. And it's sad because I see too many politicians here in Turlock now and not representatives of the city of Turlock and not representatives of the people of Turlock. They're representatives of their own selfish interests, and that's very sad. It's just not the right thing to do. So how long is this going to go on? I mean, we've had so many disasters here in Turlock over the last 3 years that it's hard to keep track of them. We've lost so many good employees from our city staff in the last 3 years, it's hard to keep track of them. What is going on here, folks? There's a problem in Turlock, and we need to solve this problem. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I won't go into the past fiasco that this thing is. I just want to reiterate that I think it's very important to get another swimming pool, especially a plunge type of swimming pool, into Turlock. High school competition pools are okay, but it's not the atmosphere you get when you have a plunge. And those are very rare around the nation even, and I think that Turlock had something very special in Columbia Pool, and that it should be rebuilt. Am I to understand they want to have this thing open May 1st of 2024?
Correct.
10 months. Okay. For anybody who's been there, we're going to have a brand-new pool on one of the worst roads in Turlock. I don't know what the plan has been for road repair up, and it's not going to be able to get done by May 1st, but it behooves the city to do their best to have an acceptable road in front of a new $9 million pool. Whether you get parking or anything like that, that road is an abomination at this moment. Thank you.
I previously referred to that road as a tank trap. I think it would be an effective tank trap. Okay, sorry. At times, I'm a dreamer, believe it or not, okay? So, in my opinion, this was an opportunity, Columbia Pool needing to be either refurbished or rebuilt. It was an opportunity to bring our community together, to bridge divides that have built up in our community over the years. Ideas of how we could have a non-government LLC set up specifically to raise funds and build a new pool at much lower cost than the city could do were never explored. Staff asked the council for permission for a community fundraising initiative, saying several members of the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission who raise money for a living wanted to take on the task, but this was not explored. Our city manager also promised to approach businesses, local businesses like Amazon, for donations, but that did not happen. This breaks my heart. It really does. Because the money that could have been saved, the money that could have been raised, millions, possibly millions of dollars of cannabis money, therefore could have been used to increase the quality of life on the west side. For example, sidewalks and streetlights, which many of us take for granted, but on the west side are missing in many areas, something that you, Councilmember Moniz, mentioned in your campaign material. There are many elderly widows who cannot afford to properly cool or heat their homes due to high energy costs. We could contract with Lowe's or Home Depot for the purchase and installation of highly efficient mini-split heat pump HVAC systems for the main living area, which would significantly improve the quality of their lives. You could do that for 300 to 500 households with $1 million. This is not trivial. Those are just some of the possibilities. And it really breaks my heart. It really does. The possibilities that, for whatever reason, were tossed away.
Anybody else?
Hi, Mary Jackson again. I completely agree with Ron Bridegroom. I think we both need to win a lottery, to go buy a lottery ticket. The misses, the mistakes, the delays are unconscionable. And thank God, we all need to thank God that not a single kid drowned in a pool, or in a canal, like what happened in Empire, where after 3 cousins drowned, which I've talked to you about before, that community built a pool. So I didn't know how bad it looked until this summer. I was driving one of my daughter's friends home, and we drove by Columbia Pool. And I was shocked. The area you walk in, everything's been torn down. It's an empty field. What message are you sending, or have you been sending, to the West Side community? We don't care about you? We don't care about the pool? That's on you, not our new council members, because they just inherited this disaster. It's really frustrating. I had tears in my eyes. That's where I used to change and go to my swim lessons. That's where I took my children to learn to swim. Dozens of people were not kids, were not allowed to learn how to swim there for 3 years. And that's on you. It's not on anybody else. That's on you. So we had Brett Bollinger was willing to raise the money. He probably could have gotten grant money from, he's such a well-respected water polo coach from Modesto at Johansson High School. Just poo-pooed. Or because of the lack of administration or continuous administration, we lost a huge opportunity. I will talk about this until I'm blue in the face. We should have contacted a pool contractor and done what the city of Patterson did and the Patterson Unified School District with their football field. Amy, don't nod your head. This should have been done. The AD, his family is in construction. It is a community football field. This is a community field or community pool. It should have been built in a year. It would have been built in the year. So it is so frustrating because Mr. Bridegroom, everything he said is spot on. This was politicized, and I really feel like it wasn't going to be rebuilt until the community and the public got angry. But to just tear everything apart and leave it there like that, what message are you trying to send to the West Side kids? It's not okay at all. And it will be remembered in the next election. Mark my words. I'm not making a threat. It's just These things cannot continue to happen. We should have been able to build that for less than 2 million. I'm giving you homework and I only have 4 seconds to do it. Go to online and look at Elk Grove and look at their water park that they built.
All right, is anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, we'll close the public comment, bring it back.
Motion to approve all 4 resolutions.
Okay. Second, call the roll, please.
Can I make a comment first, please? I just want to respond to what we're hearing from the public, that I wish there didn't have to be 3 summers where we didn't have a pool, and I wish that it didn't have to cost $9 million. But, you know, from my perspective, we have to look at the facts on the ground now and the situation now, and the only direction for this is forward. So I will await the roll call to.
This is what happens after 30 years of neglect. 38 years of neglect.
38 years.
This isn't this council or the previous council or that previous council. This is 38 years of neglecting this pool. And this is what happens when you don't do your upgrades, you don't do your maintenance on a pool. We have ignored this pool for 38 years. We knew we needed to fix it. Part of that is because they didn't have the money. Now we have the money. Do I like the price? Absolutely not. I think that the price is exorbitant. Do I think that we can do it cheaper through the city? No. Could we do it cheaper through private means? Yes, absolutely, 100%. We don't have that option. This is public, City of Turlock's land, City of Turlock's pool. City of Turlock has to do this. We can't give it away to somebody else and have them do it. It has to be done through the city. We rebid Odell Engineering and we got a lesser price. That helps the bottom line. Yeah. Name one thing in this day and age that hasn't been subject to inflation? Everything. Your car, your house, your utilities, your clothes, your food, everything. This is subject to the cost of inflation. We have been working, Councilmember Moniz and I have been on an ad hoc council or committee since we became council members on the Columbia pool. It was one of my promises. I know it was one of her promises. We're gonna get this pool done 100%, and we have the money. So let's get this pool done.
Yeah, Columbia Pool's getting done because of this council member right here and the help of the vice mayor. I'm sorry. I just have to rebuke the comments that were made in here tonight, and the politicking going on in this room is disgusting. Okay? If you live in District 2 and you know any of the kids in District 2, you know how important and how critical this pool is to District 2. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, let me finish off with the fact that the roads around it are being addressed right as we speak, and they will be done probably right after they bring it in. One of the things you have to do with it being 38 years old is you have to demo it. Therefore, you had to leave it blank to start from the ground up again. This is the only time, we talked about it previously on council with different people at this dais, but we didn't have the money for it. Here we sit now, able to do this, and we're doing it as quickly as we can. So the fact that people think that we played with kids not being able to get what they wanted is absolutely false, and shame on you for even saying things to that nature. Call the roll, please.
Who was the second?
I was.
Thank you. Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz? Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. You're up for the next one?
I am.
Let's do it.
This one will be a little bit more palatable, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but this is awarding a bid and approving an agreement between the City of Turlock and Green Energy Innovations of Buena Park, California, in the amount of $395,000 and authorizing a contingency amount of $39,500 for Prairie Park light improvements. If you recall, one of our
Wow. Thank you, Director. That was good.
That's perfect.
Saved by the bell, once again, thank you. As you recall, at our August 8th council meeting, we brought forth bids, and the 2 lowest bidders were not responsive, and we'd asked council to reconsider and reject those bids, and when council made that decision, we came back and rebid that. We have really good bids that came back, significantly less than what we thought they would. And I'm really happy to say that worked out for us, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about Trudy Park.
When is it gonna be done?
It'll be done before the first of the year.
Time is of the essence.
Yeah. No, we were getting ready to go into our down season. At that point, we'll be working on that project to get it done.
Questions for the director? Okay, let's open it to the public. Any politics?
Well, I was gonna keep my mouth shut, but after some of the last comments, I think it's very important to point out on the Columbia Pool,
We're talking now, this is,
funding in general, especially for these lights coming up, that 3 members on that city council did not either support, did not support the funds that are enabling these repairs and improvements to be made.
can we stay professional?
Having said
Bill?
that,
Please.
congratulations on the bidding.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, I was at the Fresno State game, and after each touchdown, they're able to use those LEDs to shut on and shut off and do various tricks with it. So my question is.
We got the $395,000 version
so
of
my
that.
question- yeah, my question was.
There are no drones.
Are we gonna be having this kind of a show when everybody hits a home run at Pedretti?
Unfortunately, we won't.
Thank you.
We'll use the drones from the police department. Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment and bring it back.
I am really, really happy that you got the bids low. I was worried.
So was I.
Glad to support it, but I was really worried. So I'm glad they came back. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, will you call the roll? Oops, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, are you ready
I
to?
have a comment.
Okay,
Just,
comment, hold on.
Yeah, I want to echo what Vice Mayor Franco said when we had conversations before the last, whatever meeting it was where we were rejecting all the bids. I was skeptical, and so kudos to your staff and everybody for making a good recommendation because it really worked out this time. So thank you.
Agreed. All right, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. All right, the next item is affirming the community events and activities grant funding, CDBGs, and Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So before you guys, we have an item affirming the community events and activities grant funding as identified in the staff report resolution and the supporting documentation. So the grant funding for the community events and activities program has been budgeted at $50,000 for the current fiscal year, funded through the TOT taxes that, or TOT funds that come into the city. For the current funding cycle, which we're backdating to July 1 this year for our current fiscal year through June 30th, 2023 events taking place during that time. We had 18 organizations that presented on 30 events at the June 14th commission meeting, resulting in a total funding request of $87,200. After the presentation, staff did request various supporting documentation just to assist in the process, from licenses, outstanding debt, Secretary of State paperwork, 501c, and the California 3500A. So we requested all these from both nonprofit and for-profit as it relates to their organizations. From that, there's 18 events that are 11 organizations / 12. One's a joint event, for the total request of the $50,000. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for Mr. Vargas?
Yes, I have a question. The records that were requested that you just listed there, when in the process were those requested?
So we sent out an email August 17th to all the businesses with a bulleted list asking them to provide the necessary documentation.
And did the receipt of those records after that request have any bearing on the funding and the recommendation that's before us tonight?
No, it does not. The status of profit, for-profit doesn't have any bearing on the scoring. There's a scoring rubric approved by council many years ago. So the commission uses that rubric to score the presentations, and of course, their application itself. So it has no bearing whether they have their 501c or if they have their business license. It doesn't have any bearing on it. It's just staff felt it necessary to at least ask for the documentation, given some of the other criticisms received by the city on providing funds to community organizations.
I'm sorry. go ahead.
Last one. And it's always been the practice through looking at the application and through hearing Director Schultz explain last time that we ask for the IRS 501c3 status and the like receipts after the event to verify that funds are appropriately spent, correct?
Correct. So we started asking for the 501c3 in 2018. So 2017, we didn't ask for the 501c. We still asked for their for-profit or nonprofit status, but in 2018, we actually put the one-liner in there to provide their 501c status. And yes, if we give an organization $3,000, they have to provide receipts that they use those funds correctly and accurately. And if they don't, then they have to pay back that difference.
Any other questions? Okay, let's open it to public. Lori, you have your card right there? The only card.
All right, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for being considered for the community grants. But with that being said, you've heard the term bureaucratic red tape, and this grant process has been a perfect example of that. Budgeting and promotion are key to the success of any event. This process had made that very difficult. One of these events has already occurred, and 2 others are already being promoted. The application process was open May 19th with a deadline to apply of June 2nd. We attended the mandatory presentation to the Parks, Art, and Rec Commission on June 14th. The Turlock Downtown Property Owners applied for 4 events. The Downtown Business Owners Committee applied for 7, and there were other 19, so it made 30 in total. The application stated that the council would affirm or modify the grant funding request on June 27th. That was changed to July 11th and to July 25th. On July 24th, we received an email saying it had been removed from that agenda, and the staff would notify us when the information became available to them. In a span of 2 weeks, I sent 2 emails and called for some clarification, and I received no response. Only after I complained did I receive a call back, and I was told by that staff member that they did not know what was going on. Now we're into August. I requested an update and received a reply saying that staff was working on verifying all agencies' information and that they would put it on the September 12th agenda. But then 3 days later, we received an email requesting new information. The deadline for these newly requested forms was 1 week. The TDPOA had to request a copy of a form from the IRS that was going to take at least 20 days to receive. Last Friday, we were notified that if the form was not submitted to the city by the end of the day, the Downtown Business Owners Committee application would be removed. But today, we did hear that it is all good. But the agenda packet states, quote, that one organization pulled 4 of their event applications as a part of a separate process with the city of Turlock, end quote. That organization was the TDPOA, and that statement is wrong. We agreed to withdraw 2 events. The other 2 were removed. If that, quote, separate process is the PBID process, then that has nothing to do with the grants. I'm happy for the business owners, but not at the expense of the TDPOA. I'm requesting an explanation of why those 2 applications were removed and why this whole procedure had to become so unnecessarily complicated. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's through this process. I know we've been working with our administration through this, and we were given the direction to pull those 4 applications. It wasn't all of TDPOAs. There was one that did stay on there. But I know it was a part of another greater process beyond just this. So they were pulled from that. Why it took as long as it did, again, staff were working with other staff within the city, trying to make sure that any dollars that we are sending out are, we have our own kind of checks and balances, so that if someone says they're nonprofit, if someone says they're a for-profit business, that we're just making sure we're taking that extra step to make sure that we're being mindful of taxpayers' dollars that are going out, because it's not like a grant that's coming in that we're saying, oh, here's this other grant money. It's, here's our own taxpaying dollars, we're getting it out. We want to make sure it's going to where it needs to be.
Mr. Wilson, can you assure us that, like, this won't take this long going forward? Because it does seem like that was a lengthy, amount of time.
One, I'd agree it was too lengthy a period of time. And in the future, we'll make sure this process goes much smoother, and the dates we give out, we'll make sure we meet.
What is the will of council?
I will motion to approve, and I also have a comment. I'm happy to approve these recommendations, but I want to echo the concern about the amount of time that it took. As evidenced in our last discussion, I'm happy to have a reasonable policy that we use to verify that public funds are being used for the public good. But asking for all of these things and then not having it really make any difference in the outcome. At this point, it was the city was not being a good partner in this process, I feel like. And so I would, I have a couple of suggestions on how it can go better next year, perhaps, starting earlier, or if we do this in 2 cycles for events that are between July 1st and December 31st, handle those first, and then ones happen later in the year, so we can expedite processes for applicants who are planning events in the summer or in the early fall.
That was a motion? Right, understood.
Second, and all that extra stuff she said too.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Puma?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Vargas.
Just
Passes
as I
5-0.
leave, I know commission is, they are also
You guys already
wanting
meeting
to,
again?
meeting on, we're meeting tomorrow, but they do also want to take a look at the packet as a whole to address it, so it'll be a nice little thing that we can all do
Awesome.
together.
Thank you for that. All right, one last here. We have award bidding and agreement with Knife River Construction, and it's about a water main and sewer replacement, so who's up? All right, Mr. Schultz.
Well, you're popular tonight.
Yeah, in so many ways. Shedding light on things.
Shedding light on things. This is a great project that we have going here, and it's kind of an essential project that we have that relates to our roads program. This is the first step in water sewer replacement. That'll probably see many more of these as we continue through our roads program. And the importance of this is that we are making sure that we are doing the underground before we put new pavement down. And like I said, this is the first part of this, and we're asking to award a bid, approve an agreement with Knife River Construction out of Stockton in the amount of $4,591,036, and authorizing a contingency of $229,552 for the construction of water main and sewer replacement to be funded out of the Water Fund 204. Some of the main elements of this project will be installing, actually, Mr. Goodman's staff, or the contractor, will be installing 9,200 linear feet of 8-inch diameter PVC pipe. Also be installing new water service laterals to customers along the alignment, 12 new fire hydrants, 714 linear feet of 8-inch diameter sewer main pipe, manholes, install new and existing sewer service laterals to customers, trench repair, and rehabilitate the pavement on Lexington Avenue, Grant Avenue, High Street, Mitchell, with 2-inch hot mix asphalt overlays, and pavement rehabilitation on Park Street and Julian. That's through the roads program.
Oh, you baby.
And then we'll finish it up with Far and Beach. Reconstruction of pedestrian ramps will also be included in this, along with pavement and striping. As part of this bid, staff had asked for an ad alternative bid. Staff are asking not to approve that. They believe because of the bid prices that came in per unit, that we would be better off not using that bid alternative. And if we do decide to pave the extra lane, that we would do that as a change order at a lesser price.
I like lesser.
And I think with that, I'll be happy to answer questions based on this staff report.
Questions for the Director Schultz?
Yeah, it, excuse me, and just a question on the last, point you made, that it is our intention to continue the pavement that's adjacent to this area, so we don't have to, in service of fixing the roads and doing everything all in a speedy fashion.
Correct.
No more quilts.
Right.
Okay, let's open it to the public. Nobody wants to talk about piping? All right, we'll close the public comment. What color are we gonna paint the fire hydrants?
Oh, depending on the water pressure. The water pressure, depending on how much water pressure comes out of the hydrant, is what color it's painted. That way the fire department knows what to hook up to or not
Seriously?
hook up to.
There's reason.
I was being sarcastic. I'm so, like,
Yellow or red?
come on.
Yeah, are you pranking us?
No, I'm not, no.
what
So do not repaint a fire hydrant in front of your house purple.
We want different colors of blue.
Actually, in North Carolina, they do paint them
That's
blue.
actually pretty smart, because it tells our firefighters what they got to work with, right?
Correct?
Wow.
This is legit. Okay, I'm glad
It's homeowner maintenance, just like we should have done with Columbia Pool. We gotta do the sewer system. Move to approve.
West Side's getting it all. Okay, we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Bixel and a second.
Oh, third, sorry, I'm sorry.
Will you call that roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, thank you. Passes 5-0. All right, we have the city manager. Anything, sir?
Mayor, members of the council, you have in your agenda package a report that lists all the various project activities going on in all the different departments in the county or in the city.
Whoops, flashback.
Yeah, that's right. My plan is to present this in this form about every 2 months, maybe every 3 months, depending on what kind of changes are going on. So that'll be in addition to normal, typical city manager reports.
Outstanding. All right, council items for future consideration, yes.
Yes, I have one. So I brought this up before about ARPA funding, and I was glad to see that a spreadsheet was put together by Director Moreno to kind of enumerate everything about ARPA funding. I would really like us all to have a discussion about what to do with the remaining ARPA funding, because we have just a little bit over a year to obligate them. And, looking at our capital improvement projects, we have significant needs for infrastructure at our firehouses, which this could be a really good match for ARPA funding for the public safety aspect of it.
Any others? Okay, and then we get to the questions, comments, and announcements.
I just want to thank City Manager Wilson and all of the directors for putting those project lists together. I think some of the credit is gone to Vice Mayor Franco for requesting that, and it's a great way to look at everything that's going on in the city. So thank you for everyone's work to compile that and make that happen.
Just for a clarification, that those will move, so if you see it at one number, anybody watching, it could get down as a priority comes, so don't look at it like this is, I'm almost there, because it may not be, but go ahead, I'm sorry, next.
Yeah, just, yesterday was a bit somber, 9/11. I just want to give a shout out to our first responders, chief, the fire chief already took off, but just want to thank you again for what you do. The losses that we can't ever forget.
Yeah, on that same note, thank you for your service, public service personnel. 9/11, something that we'll never forget. Congratulations, Chief Ernst from Modesto Fire. He's retired now. Sort of. He'll be back. But thank you for your service. Appreciate everything that you did for not only Turlock Fire Department, but also through countywide. We can thank him for a lot of the new fire apparatuses we have. Appreciate him. Go check out the senior center. It has some really nice new stuff. No more orange accordion doors. That's wonderful. They were there for way too long.
Probably for Mr. Fagan's,
From
party,
his
right?
wedding, yeah.
Wedding reception, my bad.
But they're not there anymore, and it looks fabulous. New kitchen, so if anyone needs to rent out a kitchen, keep in mind the senior center's there. I also attended a ribbon cutting for the Sunnyside Senior Living Apartments on 20th Century Boulevard. Thank you to Director Sims, because he was one of the big, he puts a lot of stuff together behind the scenes, and so he helped with the ribbon cutting, he helped with City of Turlock giving out a certificate. It's a fabulous addition to Turlock. Senior apartments, fabulous center. I think that it's going to be a real big hit, and they also want to expand. So that's awesome. And we know that Director Sims is hard at work. Thank you very much for everything you did for them and for the city.
Nothing? And she meant to say, and come on Chick-fil-A, but, anyway. I'm not giving up. First, condolences to you and the recent losses in your, family. Great job, Anthony, and, if just we could, a prayer for, Mr. Glavin's family and friends. That was a sudden, loss, and everybody has losses, and we should acknowledge that we're not all perfect and that we do want to, just have a little grace with each other. So with that, we do not have a closed session, and therefore we will be in adjournment. Good night.